Right. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Sunday show. It is now 1 o'clock, our new start time, 1 p.m. Central. Spread the word around. Let everybody know so that people can get tuned in. Thank you for joining us. I'm Matt Dillahunty. Joining me today, Seth Andrews. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing well. Sort of sliding, toward Christmas. It's one of those things where right now it just feels sort of inevitable. We enjoy it, but it's just exhausting. Do you find the holiday exhausting? I find the holiday exhausting, man.
I don't find it exhausting at all anymore. And that's because I don't go anywhere or interact with anybody.
We're not doing a big, I don't go and hang out with the, bio family, obviously. But we've got people coming over and, oh my God, we got to do the food and we're going to do this and we're going to do that. And it's always going to be an amazing time. But the preparation of it is a lot. And shopping for Natalie is a lot. So I'm going through and I got totally lucky. And she's not going to see this before Christmas. So I'm safe. But I'm like, I want to buy her an article of clothing. Well, buying a woman's clothes for me is like going to a foreign planet. It's terrifying. Terrifying. Women's sizes. Wait, what is that? So I got lucky and I went into a store and one of her tennis associates works in that store and saw me walk in with kind of that helpless puppy dog look on my face. And she walked up and she's like, "Hey, you shopping for Natalie?" And I almost hugged her. Yes. You know what her size is. You know what she looks good in. Would you help me? And so she took my hand and led me around the store. And I found a lovely cashmere sweater. It's kind of tan with some rose hues in it. And I packed it up into a box and she will unwrap it on Thursday. And then hopefully I will be, for a moment, the greatest husband in the world. So we shall see how that goes. So, and I got her a doggy blow dryer for the
nice. You're up against some stiff competition, but you'll probably beat me out for husband of the year. We're not having people over. We're not actually doing much of anything. I think I don't know. Excuse me, wonderful, brilliant, beautiful, sexy producer lady. I'm going to get here from HR for that. Are we? Yes. Am I correct that we are mostly looking forward to just sitting around and not necessarily having to work or have all the other responsibilities?
Yeah, gonna call my mom and my stepdad and open the gifts they sent us, but that's pretty much it.
Yeah.
Do you make it to midnight on New Year's? Because we're 10:30 p.m. people on the 31st of December.
I've made it to midnight on a number of them, but definitely not everyone. I think Arden and I have probably made it to midnight on everyone except for the year where I had heart surgery. I don't know what happened. I might have been awake at night. It doesn't matter. But with family spread out all over the place and no family close to us, it's just a handful of friends. And since most of our friends are either having family over or are going away to be with family, it just gets to be us and the cat and all of the reptiles. And it's going to be nice.
We get woken up at midnight anyway because somebody in the neighborhood's always shooting off fireworks, which I assume they held back from the 4th of July and have been keeping in the garage. So it's always mortars, just and the dog's eyes get this big and Linus starts to shake and he jumps over in my lap and we're like, "It's going to be fine, puppy. It's almost over with." And then 15 minutes later, we all go back to sleep. But I am looking forward to putting 2025 in the rear view mirror because Jesus, it has been unbelievably bad. And I'm hoping that better days are ahead. It's that weird. I don't want to have my head in the sand, but I don't want all optimism to die. And so, I'm thinking, well, maybe there will be some kind of societal reset may happen in the months ahead. We shall see. So that's where I fall.
There's a number of things been frustrating. And by the way, the Sunday show is not necessarily about political stuff, and I'm probably not going to get too crazy political today. Mainly, this is your opportunity, theists, Christians, Hindus, Muslims, Scientologists, to call in and explain what you believe, why you believe it, and if you think we should also believe it, why you think we should believe it. What is the argument? What is the evidence? What is the justification for this? And despite the fact that I've done this for a couple of decades, sincere, robust attempts almost never happen. And the number of people even attempting to defend their God beliefs has dropped a little bit. And, a lot of it's got to do with YouTube algorithms and the fact that the world is messed up in 29 million different ways. But as always, theists are going to get priority here on the Sunday show. And so if you're a theist of any stripe and you want to offer a sincere explanation, all we want to know is, why should we believe that there's a God? Why should we believe that there's something supernatural? Why should we believe any of those things? We've heard the stories. You're looking at two former Christians, one a Christian broadcaster, you can tell from the radio voice, and then me, someone who not only was studying to be a pastor, but I remember I did a debate against Mike Lacona on the resurrection at Austin Baptist Church here in Texas. And deacons from the church that I attended when I was a teenager before I went into the Navy, and friends and family members who were still believers, flew down from Missouri to attend that debate at Austin Baptist Church. And one of them got up during the Q&A to basically say, you may not remember me, but we all thought you were going on to great things for the Lord. What happened? And that answer is going to live there in the Q&A section of that debate forever. But we're atheists, we're skeptics, we're humanists. We're not pretending to know everything. And maybe we've overlooked something. So when you call in with your defense of God or the supernatural or whatever else, we're going to be asking questions. We're probably going to interrupt. We will probably have to put the conversation on pause so that everybody's on the same page. You got to remember, there's the two of us and an entire audience of people out there, and we don't all necessarily know the same things or understand the same things in the same way. And once we start getting clarity, then the goal is either for you to demonstrate why we should share your belief, or for us to be able to show why we don't agree and don't think we should share that belief. And hopefully it spawns some good conversations. We will also take callers from godless heathens as well, especially since those are the ones that are on the line now.
I am releasing in 2 days a podcast and video conversation with someone who was hosted on this channel, Dr. Aaron Adair, who is a physicist, and he is the author of the book, The Star of Bethlehem, Skeptical Guide, I believe is the subtitle. And he has gone through the Gospels, Matthew and Luke, and the Nativity story. And he's also contrasted the claims about Jesus's birth against, physics, against cosmology. And it's a fascinating conversation. We go back and kind of dissect why the Nativity story simply does not work. And it doesn't work on a number of levels, not just the contradictions between Matthew and Luke, but as far as the history of the day, the nonsensical idea that, Joseph had to put Mary on a donkey to take her away for a census that would have happened locally, the Quirinius census not happening in that particular year, the problem with Herod disappearing in one of the books of the Bible altogether. So, the killing of the firstborn, the massacre of the firstborn doesn't even happen in one version of that story, the mistranslation of virgin when it comes to Mary, the borrowing from other mythologies or potential borrowing, because Jesus obviously was not the first deity who had been born of a virgin. He was not the first dying and rising God. He wasn't even the first deity who had been crucified. And some people would call us killjoys, you're just trying to strip the season of its magic. And I don't think that's the case at all. I think, honestly, the best parts of Christmas have nothing to do with the baby Jesus. I really think the best parts of Christmas are totally secular or lean pagan or whatever. And one final thought before we get in, I know the call's not to digress too much, but I am fascinated by the Christmas decorations in our neighborhood. So as you drive by, the houses are lovely. You see one's got an inflatable snow globe, and somebody else has a giant soldier, like a toy soldier from the Nutcracker. It's this big 8-foot thing, and there's a styrofoam looking snowman with the carrot nose and the top hat and the scarf, and it's charming. And among them, and several neighbors have this, and I'm sure you've seen it, Matt, is the nativity scene that looks like two T-Rexes fighting. Have you seen that?
I have not.
Okay, well, it's Mary. It's outlines of Mary and Joseph over the baby Jesus. I wish I'd brought a graphic so Arden could put it on screen, but I've been remiss. But if you look at it for a second, you see the outline of Mary and Joseph over a cradle, and then all of a sudden your brain flips, and all you can see is two T-Rexes fighting over something that is in the middle of the scene. So keep your eyes open for it. Google search it. A manger scene T-Rexes. It'll pop right up. And once you see that, when you're driving around the city, if it pops into your field of view, you won't be able to see anything else. I think that's awesome. So that's how we celebrate Christmas in this neighborhood. FYI.
My ex-wife loves Christmas, and we did a video about Christmas from an atheist or secular perspective. And amongst the various things we did to kind of prep for the videos, we drove around to a number of different neighborhoods within 10 miles of us, and she had a little. It was fun. She had a little sheet, and as we'd go through the neighborhood, she would put down check marks for any house that had clearly Christmas displays and put them into different categories for purely religious, partially religious, zero religious. And so you'd drive around and you'd see a nativity scene or a star. And I think star went into the, kind of dubious category anyway. But you'd see a nativity scene and alongside a snowman. And so that would go in the mixed. And then you'd see one that was just like all Peanuts characters and Snoopy stuff. And there wasn't a Jesus or a nativity scene or an angel or even a star anywhere near it. And you'd put that in the secular one. Even though we're in Texas, we're in Austin, which is a more lefty kind of liberal town. But I don't remember the statistics. The statistics are in the video. But the number of houses that had purely religious decorations was significantly lower than any other category. And the one thing I used to do...
Was that it?
I found it. I didn't want to interrupt your story, but I think I found it.
Now you see only two T-Rexes fighting over an orb in the middle of the screen.
Oh, wow.
From now on, yes. That's all you will see. You're welcome, world. You are welcome.
That is awesome.
Okay.
But yeah, in addition to that little tally, we talked about how if you were to go out in June, not in December, but in June, even if you stood out in front of a church as people were leaving church and you said, hey, I've got a couple of quick questions if you don't mind, I'm doing a survey. And I was like, give me your first thought to these things. And you read off, like rye bread, birthday parties, Christmas, blah, 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 blah. And really, you only care about Christmas. Everything else is a distraction. How many people walking out of church, when asked for the first thing that pops in their head about Christmas, would actually say Jesus or anything about the risen Savior, as opposed to family, presents, Frosty, whatever. And we didn't get to do that experiment, but I think it would be interesting to try to find out, even after walking out of church, when you're asked, what do you think of with Christmas? The overwhelming majority of what people think of has nothing to do with Jesus. And that's why there's the fights over, are there pagan origins or are there not pagan origins? And, is the tree an evil thing that's just for the godless heathens, or, does it matter? And it's just been really fun because I like Christmas, but I'm I like the things about Christmas that I think we should have invented, whether there was any religious thing behind it or not, which is, hey, let's get together with people we care about. Well, maybe we'll exchange gifts, but we'll spend time. We'll take time away from the stresses and drudgery and problems of everyday life and kind of catch up, because that doesn't always get to happen. And that to me is the bulk of what Christmas was.
Have you
Is.
ever driven through one of the, I mean, have you ever done one of those drive-through church nativities? For those who don't know what I'm talking about, only in religion would you see something like this. But you drive by a big church campus in the month of December, and you'll see the poster. It says, live outdoor drive-through nativity. And there's always lights and stuff all over it. So the idea is that you pull in, and they've sort of roped around the parking lot and around the building and everything. Scene by scene, you will drive by the story of the miraculous birth of the baby Jesus. And they always do this. They always say, with live animals, because that's a big deal. So, oh, yay. Now, when we drive through and we have the kids in the back seat, there's going to be a friggin' camel or sheep, or they take some poor dog and they put wool on it and say it's a sheep or something, and so look, there's a camel, and you go through and there's the birth, and there's Herod, and there's this, and there's the star, and there's the wise men, and there's angel song, and then there's probably clergy, some kind of an ambassador for the church who's at the end, who is handing out brochures, hoping you'll either join the church or you'll drop to your knees and accept the baby Jesus that you saw 5 scenes previously. And I myself, the cynic in me, has come to the point where the whole story just, honestly, it's offensive, right? I mean, Yahweh, who hasn't gotten anything right throughout the entire Old Testament, decides that now his solution for saving all of us is to impregnate an unwed teenager so the offspring could grow up to become a bloody meat pinata to rescue us from the torture chamber that deity himself created, because he simply could not properly implement a blueprint for life, the universe, and everything. I mean, the whole story is, it's offensive when you think about it in that way. So when people get all misty-eyed about, oh, holy night, and, the birth of the beautiful Christ child, and he has come to save us all, I don't see beauty. I see guilt. I see shame. I see mythology. I see control. I see all these other problems. And when I say that in the company of believers who have emotionally attached themselves to the love and light story of the birth of Jesus, they think I'm the problem. And I'm trying to convince them, no, I'm not the problem. The whole story exists because we're shitty. Because because we weren't worth saving without torture and execution. Anyway, you know already what I'm talking about. This old hat to you, Matt, but I'm just venting. So that's where I'm at on the nativity story.
Well, I tell you what, we got a couple callers, a couple atheists with questions. We still don't have theists. And so, we've got a number of different phone lines, and we're going to go ahead and start taking calls now. I got a couple of quick, kind of announcements related to the line to make. But we're going to be here for the next 2 hours and 40 minutes until 4 p.m. Central. And at that point, there's going to be an episode of Calling It Now that's going to go live. You will be automatically shifted over, and that will be followed later this evening by the Sunday show After Dark. In addition to that, these are almost every show on the Line Network, surprisingly, the Line, are call-in shows. And in addition to the Sunday show, Calling It Now, and the Sunday show After Dark that airs on Sunday, there's going to be an episode of Skeptalk on Monday at 6 p.m. Central. Chewed Gum is Tuesdays at 6 p.m. Central. My show, The Hang Up, is going to be Wednesdays at 6 p.m. Central. And then Thursday, because trans folks can't do anything just like everybody else, the Transatlantic Call-In Show takes place at 2 p.m. Central. And make sure you jot down those times. And if you get time to come watch live, all of those shows cover different topics from a secular perspective, from the standpoint that, you don't get to appeal to your holy book to judge everybody else and make laws for everybody else and determine other people's value without it being challenged, especially if you haven't gone to any trouble to demonstrate that any of it's true. I mean, if your story that you believe is indistinguishable to the rational mind, I'm not necessarily implying you're irrational, but to what we understand right now as rational, if your story is indistinguishable from a fairy tale. You're the one that has to take the steps to distinguish it, to show, I know this feels like Magic Man in the sky or, blah, blah, but no, here's what's really happening. And more importantly, here's how we can know that's what's happening. So we are queuing up calls right now. Seth, if you're ready, we've got the atheists calling in.
Sure.
And
ready.
Arden, do I have any other announcements that I need to get out?
We'll probably be doing some holiday events on Christmas and New Year's Eve, but those are not locked in yet, so stay tuned.
Awesome, possum. All right, here we go. Starting the Sunday show, 20 minutes in with Mark in Tennessee. Pronouns are him. Mark says, needed the Christian value system to develop a moral compass. Hey, Mark, you're on with Seth and Matt.
Hey, guys, can you hear me?
We can.
Okay, great. Yeah. So I spent the first 25 years of my life as an agnostic, no moral compass at all, total hedonist, didn't care who I hurt. I converted to Christianity in my mid-20s, was very devout. I was very experienced different types of Christianity. I was Catholic for some of the time, Protestant for some of the other time. And the past 3 years, I have deconstructed my Christianity, and I am now considered a hard atheist, but I still see the value of the experience I had, and that it helped me develop a moral compass that still informs my values now as an atheist. So for that reason, I do think for some people, they do need God to be good.
Okay. Why didn't you have a moral compass at all before finding Christianity?
I think the way my parents raised me was just do whatever makes you happy. And
Hey, Mark,
for me,
do me a
Really?
favor, pal.
that-
If you would,
Sorry?
forgive the interruption, my friend. I'm so very sorry. You're distorting on your end, and I think this can be solved if we back you off of your phone or microphone just a couple of inches. So you will remove yourself
Okay,
just a hair from that mic. I think it'll be less distorted, and we can understand you better. Would that be all right?
sure.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay. So the way your parents raised you, they never taught you at all right from wrong or how to act or any reason to care about anybody else at all.
I mean, maybe they did, but more so, I just really didn't consider other people. And it was
Okay.
my
Well,
faith that really made me do that.
okay. So you, for whatever reason, whether it's your parents or you rejecting what your parents are taught, or, you went to school, we had, you get taught the basic rules and right from wrong and everything else, but you're saying you didn't have that and Christianity gave you that. Why do you think, so Christianity is a number of different things to many different people. How would you ever be able to demonstrate that the moral compass that you constructed from Christianity was right or good?
I would say it kind of gave me training wheels of doing something I normally would not have done without having a fear of hell. Like I had to literally have that. I know there's not a hell now, but I had to have that lingering over me to force me out of my comfort zone to do things I never would have done. Apologize to people I never would have done, return money I stole, and do all sorts of things. And after practicing those better values, I learned the benefits that it would have on me for having peace and happiness in life. So that helped inform my atheism currently.
And you don't think you could have gotten any sort of moral compass without Christianity?
Me personally, no, but I know plenty of atheists who developed that apart from God. So I can see
Right.
how it's very possible to do that without God. But for me personally, I needed God, and I'm not the only one who was like that.
How do you know you're not the only one that's like that? And how do you know you're like that? How do you know that something other than Christianity couldn't have taught you how to be a better person?
I would like to think that in a world where there was no religion, that it would be more standard to have such a system in place to help people that were in my position. But in our current world, the ugly truth is a lot of us just need religion. And it sucks it's
It's
that
no,
way,
no.
but that's how it is.
When I ask you why you think people need religion, you don't just get to assert that they need religion. I'm saying
Mhm.
if we know that we can develop better moral systems without Christianity, without a religion, without the lie of hell, why do you think why do you think anybody needs that? Now, I agree that that's a much easier way to get some people to think about things that they might not have paid attention to, but that doesn't mean it's the only way or the best way or the right way to get them to think about it.
Yeah, those are all good points. And I wish there was another system that was in place where I didn't have to have religious trauma in the past 20 years, like you suggest.
Okay, but so the problem is that you seem to be calling in to say, hey, I needed Christianity, other people need Christianity, but now I know that Christianity is not true, or I no longer believe it's true, so I don't need it anymore. If you don't need it anymore, are you now immoral?
No, not at all. I understood now which values were bad in that value system of Christianity and which ones are good, and I learned to keep the good and throw out the bad.
How did you learn which parts of Christianity were bad? Did Christianity teach you that, or was it something outside of Christianity?
I would say that would be something outside of Christianity. That'd just be my
Cool,
conscience. Which means
that you're acknowledging that you really didn't need Christianity. You needed whatever it was that offered that correction to Christianity, because that was the path to a better moral system.
Well, if it were not for that experience, I don't think I would have cared what my conscience said.
Okay, well, I only care about whether or not Christianity is true. We already acknowledge that lies, whether they are Christianity or some other religion, lies can be useful. But I'm not going to prop up a bunch of lies when, by your own admission, the path to the better moral system came not from a religion. So instead of sitting there saying, oh, I needed this and other people needed this, I think it'd probably be better for you to realize that while that is perhaps what got you jump started, what you needed was secular humanism or something outside of the religious moral systems. And if you'd have been started with that, the system that exists in some sense that you wish exists, then you wouldn't have needed Christianity.
That's a fair point.
Seth, where are you on the usefulness versus true? Do you think there are people who just can't develop a moral compass by any means other than some religion?
I worry that this takes us into the bigotry of lowered expectations. It's really condescending. Well, some people are too weak, or they just aren't able to figure it out, or they don't have the moral fortitude without an external agency. I don't buy that. I think that diminishes people and the agency that we should be acknowledging and enabling. I also hear in your call, Mark, a specific reference to hell. If it hadn't been for the threat of hell, you may not have chosen the right path instead of the wrong one, which is a kind of an amplified riff on corporal punishment. Hey, look, if somebody has a cattle prod and I make the wrong decision and I get zapped, then I'm going to stay on the straight and narrow more often. And now that I realize that kind of that's what the straight and narrow is, I don't need the cattle prod anymore. Well, I just don't think there is any moral teaching in the Christian Bible and the Christian dogma or doctrine that doesn't exist, often in better ways, well beyond religion. I think it's important not to surrender to religion what we can explain evolutionarily, we can explain in terms of society and without all the mythology and back. I think the idea of doing something for fear of hell, what is it that Forrest says? If you do a right and moral action because you're afraid of hell, you're not a good person. You're a bad person on a leash. And I think I agree. And so I would assert that any sort of moral teaching or moral directive that you came to, the attitudes that are pro-social, they came to you, as Matt said, far outside of Christianity. Not to belabor it, but just real fast. If we were to, I like to use these examples. I will say to a religious person, look, if God came to you and told you to execute your child, the way he commanded Abraham to execute Isaac on the altar, would you kill your kid? And they say no. Would you own slaves? No. Would you execute someone for picking up sticks on the Sabbath? No. Would you commit genocide? No, et cetera, et cetera. And I say, well, you just made a moral decision outside of the quote unquote morality of the Bible. And I think Matt's right. I think you are making moral decisions far beyond and above any sort of ancient scriptures. And that should be acknowledged as such because it has value.
I think what you said, Mark, mirrors something we hear a lot of times from Christians. And I think it's part of the lie. And it's part of the lie that I would like to hopefully maybe disabuse you of. And that is, you're like, there are other ways to learn this stuff, and other people get their moral code in other ways. And I needed something beyond Christianity to fix me after Christianity moved me in a direction that was better, but not good enough, whatever, however you want to phrase it. And you're basically like, I can't say for sure that this is the only way that I could get from immoral or amoral to more moral. But I needed it at the time. And that reminds me of the folks who think that Jesus fixed their drug addiction or their alcohol addiction. They're like, oh, I couldn't have done it on my own. And yet, if in fact there isn't a Jesus behind that person, all they needed was the thought that someone was there and not that someone was there, which means they're wrong in saying that I couldn't do it on my own. Essentially, you did do it on your own. You just found a particular crutch. Do you remember, Mark, when you stopped being an agnostic and amoral and you kind of became a Christian for a period of time, what was the driving force to convince you? Did you think it was actually true, or did you think it was good, or was it utilitarian? Why did you become a Christian in the first place?
I had a near-death experience where I tried to commit suicide, and I thought that I saw hell, but it was really just me ODing on Ambien. And so I believed that there was a hell, and then an evangelist told me how to not go there. So that's where it started.
Okay.
Mark, you'd referenced 20 years in the faith and religious trauma that resulted. What gave you trauma specifically?
The entire way that the religion functions, going, for instance, to Roman Catholic confession, and within 10 minutes of leaving the confessional, being like, oh, I forgot to confess these sins, I got to go right back. And so it's like I was never good enough. There was always more. Even as an evangelical, it's like I was never good enough. And there's
see
a lot
the
of trauma
challenge
associated with those teachings.
You can see the challenge, right? Because I'm listening and I'm hearing, well, I needed it to be able to make a moral choice. And out of, in the same sentence, it was wrong and it was abusive and it terrorized and traumatized me. And I still carry those scars today. Can you see how we wrestle with those two conflicting messages that we are hearing from you?
Oh, absolutely.
Fair enough.
All right. Well, I appreciate the call, Mark. I'm glad you found a better way. I think it's worth remembering that just because you found a path worked for you doesn't mean that was the only path, doesn't mean that path was a necessary path. And so instead of saying, hey, I wish there was a better path, let's keep finding the better path and pointing out the problems with potentially the bad ones, instead of saying that people need them. I really worry. I agree with Seth. I really worry about these. What I hear from a lot of people once they find out they were wrong about something is, oh, I don't need that anymore. But because I felt like I used to need that, I know there's the little people out there like I used to be still need that, but I have graduated, and it is an incredibly problematic view. But I appreciate the call, Mark. We got to move on to some other callers. Have a good Sunday.
Thank you.
I'm working on a potential speech that I may never, ever, ever ever give, but I'm going to write it anyway. I'm about 30% into it, about many of the really bad ideas, the bad claims, especially in the meme verse that atheists like to make out there, especially looking down that nose of superiority. Uh, you know, uh, the streets are more empty Sunday mornings because those evil people are at church, and all Christians are Nazis, and that type of thing. And I feel like I've got enough equity in the movement to be able to address some of that. But this notion that we can be atheists and somehow that inoculates us from bad ideas, from laziness, from bias, from just being, biped primate with, you know, barely evolved brains against the technologies in front of us. Many times we simply cannot or will not keep up. And so, this idea that, well, I'm an atheist, it doesn't mean that I came to atheism for a rational reason. I think we have to go deeper and find out, well, how did you get there? And if you deconstruct it, what does that look like? And then we keep our minds open for any evidence that presents itself in the days, months, and years ahead. But, this atheism is not, what's that? Is it an acronym that says A, thinking, something, humanist? I don't know. All the letters mean something. Skeptical thinker. It's this very elite, snobbish way of saying, well, if I don't believe in a God, somehow I've evolved into a higher form, and that's just bullshit. It's just
Yeah,
absolute
it is.
crap. So
It is bizarre.
yeah,
But it is at least kind of understandable that
Yeah.
we like to feel that we're better than we used to be, and we probably are. But that instead of just acknowledging, hey, I was like this and I improved, it's, oh, I've now improved to the point where I can look down upon the people.
Yeah.
Like I said, not only did my IQ not go up when I stopped being a Christian, it has almost certainly gone down, as that's what happens as you age, because it's a relative value, and I don't give a shit about IQ. I might be colloquially smarter and even better informed on a number of topics, and I believe I don't. I mean, we can have debates about morality. I absolutely am convinced that overall I'm a much more moral person than I was when I was a Christian. And with so many different faces to Christianity, I would never say, "Oh, I'm now better than all Christians," or I mean, you can't put them all in the same bucket. It's problematic. But
FYI, before you take the next call, I just want you to know
Sure.
I'm drinking out of a mug that has the tattoo that is on your leg. It has my cat. I have a mug with the cat on it that you now have permanently inked into your
Nice.
body. Just want you to know that. So the cat
I
lives
do
on.
have that inked, and I will also be getting a second tattoo of the biblically accurate Zerba, and we'll give more details on that later. But thanks so much for everybody who helped contribute and support recoveringfromreligion.org and the Secular Student Alliance and the various good work that we do here, in addition to evidently stuffing all of our own pockets and taking over the world and controlling everything in atheist media. All right.
I have to Google Zerba. Go ahead. I'll be right back here.
Brandon is calling from Hawaii. Brandon's a theist and says, I'm not sure I understand the note. President Best is calling. I'd like to talk about the future of America with Matt. Hello, Brandon. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good, Matt. How are you?
Well, confused by the note, but intrigued. What's up?
So should we start with maybe that I'm a theist? Let's start there.
Sure. Have you got a reason for us to also be theists?
Well, I'm a Christian. So yeah, I believe in Jesus Christ and I know that he exists. So that's
Okay.
where I start, is it's all about Jesus.
Well, if you start with that Jesus exists, then we've got a problem, because I don't know that Jesus exists.
Right. But I didn't say you did. I said I did, right? So
I know, but
I know.
what I asked you, what I asked you, Brandon, was, do you have a reason that we should be Christians? And you said, yes, I believe Jesus exists. That's where I start. Well, I don't start there. So what's the reason that Seth and I should be Christian?
Because like the real Gnostic Christ, right? So we're not talking about the historical Christ. I'm talking about the crazy Christ that got crucified, the one that was literally nuts, right? But he said some good things, right? And one of the things he said was love one another as yourself. And that's something that I live by, the golden rule, right? And so,
Okay. I'm sorry,
as a
Brandon.
Christian, right?
Hey, Brandon. I'm asking for a reason why we should be a Christian, and you're saying that you have a different version of Christian than perhaps some other people do, and none of that matters which version you're advocating for or anything else. I'm looking for the reason we should be a Christian.
Sure. Well, the fruits of the Spirit, right? So 1 Corinthians 13, right? Love is patient, love is kind, it does not envy, it does not boast, it is not rude, it is not proud, it is not self-seeking, keeps no record of
Yeah, I don't
wrong,
need you to
right?
read them or tell me. I need you to make an argument supported by evidence. You're familiar that Seth and I are both former Christians, I assume, who have read and know the Bible really well. The Bible on its own is the collection of claims. Actually, you're making a claim based on those claims. The fruits of the Spirit do not in any way demonstrate that Christianity is true.
Sure. And I'm more like Jordan Peterson. I see it more as like it's true in its expression, right? It is true in a
I'm sorry,
in a
Brandon,
morphic sense, in a universal sense, not in a real sense.
Brandon, do you think there's actually a God, an existent agent being that is the creator of the universe?
Do I believe in one? Yes.
Cool. How do you know that that one is real?
So right, I don't, right? So this is where it's hard.
Okay.
That's where faith comes in, right?
Then I don't need to have a conversation with you, Brandon, because I've already talked to Jordan Peterson and he's nuts. And also, I don't need a metaphorical God or a metaphorical substrate. I need someone who's actually going to do what they said they were going to do, which is, here is the reason that Seth and Matt should be Christians. And when you start talking about you have no way of demonstrating that a God exists and that you're closer to Jordan Peterson with regard to it's true and its metaphorical substrate, not only do you bore me to tears, but you're now dishonest because you're not remotely doing the thing that you said you would do, which was give us a reason to become Christians, to why we needed to believe this. And you haven't even made an attempt at that. You've dodged it. So I guess I'm going to give you maybe one last chance, maybe get Seth involved. Maybe I'm asking the wrong questions. I'm still looking for a reason why Seth and I should be Christians.
Well, I mean, it says in 1 Peter, right? Always be prepared to give an answer to anyone who asks.
Yes. So why aren't you prepared then? Why aren't you prepared?
Well, I didn't. I just kind of woke up. It's 9:44 in Hawaii, right?
But
so
Brandon,
kind of woke
Brandon,
up
if you're going to read us 1 Peter 3:15 about always being prepared, it seems really stupid to then offer the excuse that you just woke up. That's for why you're not prepared, but you're supposed to always be prepared. And you literally picked up a phone to call in. And so the question was, why aren't you prepared? You've called this show you've called the line 8 times. In all of that time, you haven't found a way to become prepared to answer the most basic question, which is, why should we be Christian?
Yeah, well, I mean, to be fair, right? I called in to talk about the future of America and politics.
To be fair, this is yet another excuse for why you're not prepared and why you're not doing the thing that you think you're supposed to be doing.
Sure, I should always be prepared to give an answer, but I just, it gets hard because it's faith, right? And I can't prove it. And
I'm sorry, I don't need more excuses. Brandon, I don't need more excuses. Seth, are you interested in more excuses?
Mostly, I'm interested in the invocation of faith, which can be made for any belief system not rooted in the evidence. So, if an Islamist came to you, a devout Muslim, and said the Quran is true and Allah is the only true God, and I know it because of faith, Brandon, would you take that at face value and then convert to Islam?
If it meant that the world would be better, I would. Yeah.
I'm sorry, wait a minute. How would you determine if the world was going to be better? And what does that have to do with whether or not the claim is true? Like, if you invoke faith, then anybody could claim anything untethered to reality, and you would just hitch your wagon to it by arbitrarily deciding that maybe it was a net social gain and not whether or not it was true.
Sure. And so, like, for me, I like what Sam Harris says, where he says we have to get to a point where the most or the best good for all people, right? And so whatever system that is, if it's Islam, if it's Christianity,
That's actually
if it's
not
race,
what Sam Harris's position is. As somebody who sat on stage with him and discussed this on multiple occasions as the two of us toured, Sam's version is not that simple version of the greatest good for the most people. Sam is instead a version of a consequentialist, which you'd know if you'd read his book, The Moral Landscape.
I did, yeah. That's my favorite
Okay.
book. I mean, it's my favorite book
It's your
on
favorite book.
morality.
It's really weird, Brandon, that you're calling in as a Christian and saying it's faith and offering absolutely nothing. And yet all you want to do is continue to quote people and then talk about how Sam Harris's book on morality is your favorite. I mean, that's a hot mess.
I mean, outside of the Bible, right? So my favorite book on morality is the Bible, but outside of that, it is.
So your favorite book on morality is the Bible. What is your favorite moral position in the Bible that is superior to all others? Is it the one about slavery?
Love one another as yourself.
If you're going to love one another as yourself, would you enslave yourself according to what the rules say in Exodus 21?
No, but that was a different time, man. That was like
no,
way
but
long ago.
I'm sorry.
That's
I'm sorry, Brandon.
world.
I'm sorry, Brandon. I'm sorry, Brandon. I'm no longer sorry because I think you're dishonest. I think that you are insincere and that you do not know what you're talking about and that you are just going to keep coming up with excuse after excuse. Somebody who actually read The Moral Landscape and bothered to understand it would not only not have gotten that wrong, but they would also not be saying, oh, that was a different time. Was slavery still immoral back then, or was it moral?
It was immoral, but it was
okay. So it was immoral. It was immoral, and yet it was immoral. It was immoral. It was immoral. It was immoral, and yet the Bible advocates for it. And you cite the Bible as being your preferred source for morality, with Sam Harris being a close second.
Advocate for it. The Old Testament is
absolutely advocates for it. No, Brandon, I'm going to mute you because now you're just lying. It absolutely, Exodus 21, if you'd actually read it or paid any attention, or if you were remotely fucking honest, Exodus 21, and also in Leviticus and in Deuteronomy, but we can stick with just Exodus 21, specifically goes through with laws about slavery. It tells you who to enslave, how to enslave them, how to trick Jewish slaves into being your slaves forever. It tells you that you can beat your slaves as long as they don't die within a day, and that those are your property to be passed on to your children. They are your money. That is absolutely advocating for slavery, when the only moral position on slavery that I would advocate for is owning another person is immoral, and anyone advocating for it is by default immoral and treating others inhumanely. No God who is remotely moral would have ever encouraged such a position or even allowed such a position. If the God of the Bible can come out and say, thou shalt not wear fabrics of mixed fibers and shall not eat pork or shrimp, then the God should very easily have been able to say, thou shalt not own other people as property, and don't you dare put it in my fucking book. I'm going to unmute you now, Brandon. Let's see if there's any more lies or avoidance of the topic that you'd like to engage in before we move on.
Well, I'm just trying to think how to respond. That was a lot. Gosh, where do I begin?
It's more about where you end.
I will say, I'm sorry, what?
It's
Go
more
ahead.
about where you
Go ahead.
end because we're coming up. Go ahead.
Oh yeah, sorry. This can be the end. I can go away. But I guess what I would say
You will.
is that I would complete what Jesus said, where he said, "Love one another as yourself," right? And I would just complete the circle and just say, "Love one another as yourself, for there is no other." And there is, obviously, that's crazy to think that there's no other, but to God, it's one being, right? So to God, there's no other. For humans, for us, there's other. You're a different person, Matt. I'm different. Seth is different, right? So we're all, we're all beautiful and different in our own ways. But to God, there's no
Not if
other,
they're
right?
advocating
So
for
love one
slavery, we're
another as
not.
yourself, for there's no other. What?
I'm not convinced, Brandon, that you are. I just don't know that you're legit. I'm not convinced that. I mean, anybody who says, "Well, I haven't had my coffee, so I'm not able to necessarily make the argument," but you took the time to call in is a red flag for me. But I want to come back to all of these fruits of the Spirit that you invoked out of the New Testament. I believe the fruits are in the New Testament. Um, all the best moral teachings that are in the Bible, do you think they began with the Bible? Do you think earlier cultures didn't have moral codes? Do you think we didn't have evolved ethics where we were acting in pro-social ways, where we understood and practiced love, where we, honored agreements, and where we stood up against bullies and we learned to help the needy? Do you think that's indigenous to Christ and that it didn't exist for the thousands upon thousands of years before the writing of the Old and New Testament?
Well, I don't. So, I mean, sure, the ancient was it the Sumerians, right?
Sumerians,
That
the
Sanskrit.
Egyptians. I mean, I'm
Sumer-
hell. Go back
yeah, the
50,000.
Egyptians. I mean,
Go back to the
sure.
origin story of humankind, evolving out of earlier primates. Pro-social behaviors helped us to survive and to thrive. And so my point is, anything that you might quote me out of the Bible that happens to be amoral or pro-social teaching, even if it is so, it's not original and it's certainly not indigenous to Christianity or religion as a whole, right? So why lean on the New Testament if these things exist in human edition far predating the writing of the Bible?
Well, I think the Old and New Testament are both God's word, so that's why
I
we
don't
would
care
lean
what
on
you
God's
think.
word, right? Well, it's God's word.
I
It's
want
not.
to
It
know
doesn't
is
matter what
what
I
you
think.
know and can
It's God's word.
demonstrate.
God wrote the Bible.
You're right there. That's the first thing you've said that I think Seth and I would both agree with. It doesn't matter what you think.
I don't think it's a difficult question. If pro-social behaviors and moral guidelines existed well before and outside of the fruit of the Spirit is written about in Scripture, why do you need the Bible?
Well, I mean, you don't. You and this is where I'm more like Jordan Peterson, right? So I'm not like him in the sense I don't know if he thinks God wrote the Bible. I don't really know what he thinks, but because it's difficult to follow him for me, but I try my best and I can follow him and I understand him because our
That's your
minds, I
problem.
think very similarly. I'm sorry, what?
What's Jordan
I was
Peterson
just
have
saying
to
that's your problem,
do
but keep going.
with pro-social behaviors, moral and ethical
Well, he's
behaviors?
all of that. Like, look at him. He's a star of ethical behavior. Look at his life. Look at his daughter,
Look at his
Michaela.
life.
Look at what he's gone through, the suffering he's overcome, the alchemy. Like, he's a star. He's like Jesus
He's not legit.
in my
Brandon's not
mind.
legit.
Yeah. Brandon, I'd love it if you just go ahead and acknowledge what we all already know, which is that you're not remotely sincere and you're playing some role so that we can move on with at least something true from you rather than just a parade of lies.
Okay, so go to presidentbest.com, and that's the truth.
There we go. Thank you and welcome to
no.
Ban.
So I bought this as a gag. I saw it online just for a few bucks. I figured it might come in handy whenever we have calls like this. So I think if you push the button, yeah, there's a tiny little flush of the toilet. So case we have to use it in the future with callers. I'm ready for future flushing. So there you go.
I'd really, I mean, if it weren't a waste of the audience's time, I jotted down Brandon's number. I'm reluctant to actually call Brandon, but I would love to have a conversation with some of these obvious bullshitters, not just trolls. I mean, this wasn't somebody that just, oh, I'm just looking to, to get somebody's goat or whatever. What is it that they get out of this? What is, what is it? Did he say President Truth, by the way?
I didn't even hear the last part of the website.
Because that's not even a real website. So good job there. I might have misheard that part.
I don't know what that is.
It's absolutely wild. And I'd really love to know what they get out of it. It's like, oh, I'm free on Sunday. I will call in to these atheists who are trying to have a sincere conversation, and I will pretend to be someone who's going to have the sort of discussion they're interested in. And instead, I will just dance around and offer up the most kindergarten level theology, banal things while staying calm and generally allowing them to finish in the hopes that, I don't know, are they hoping that they're going to, you guys aren't going to rile me up? But like that's just not happening.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
It's absolutely not happening.
All right.
But
I don't understand what it feeds into me either. I don't really get that. It's like, is it the thrill of hearing their voice on the air? Is it, are they
maybe?
Do they think they're that clever? I don't get it either. So
one of the things is that let's see, because we may actually get some sincere callers. So here we go. We have calling from Israel. I'm sorry, I'm hearing a lot of background noise on the call. So it should be Moshe. It says the Jewish God is something that can't be explained in words, only in faith. Well, Moshe, I'm going to take a back seat here because I have no idea how to have a call that starts with that. So let's make sure we pronounce your name right, but welcome. What are you calling about?
Do you hear me?
Yes, and you need to back a little bit away from the microphone because you're overdriving it just a little bit.
Okay, hold on. Now, hello?
Hey.
Yes, go ahead.
How are you guys?
Good.
Hey.
So, first of all, I want to start with that I don't think that we human beings have the tools to speak or to understand things about God. It's like trying to fix somebody's teeth with screwdriver.
Hello, are you there? Okay, you're calling through the web utility, Moshe. You're going to need to probably tap your phone to wake it up and then tap the browser to wake it up. And when you do, I have a quick question.
Hello?
Yeah, we hear you again, Moshe. Are you on your cell phone?
Yep, I am.
What time is it?
Now it's 10 o'clock in the night.
Cool. You're calling through the web browser, so you're going to have to make sure that your phone doesn't go to sleep and the browser doesn't go to sleep. Try again because you got cut off. What is it you're trying to say?
I was trying to say that I don't think that we human beings have the tools to speak or understand the meaning of God.
Do we have the tools to tell whether there's a God at all?
We don't have the tools.
Okay, and yet you believe there's a God, right?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
Now,
should we believe that?
It's like, first of all, should you believe that or not? It's something that depends on you.
It's like,
Okay, you've called the wrong show. You've called the wrong show. I absolutely am not interested in theistic callers who are just going to be, hey, we can't prove it. It's a whatever. You believe what you want. If you believe, you believe. That's not the purpose of this show. The purpose of this show is for people to defend their beliefs and say, here's why I think my beliefs are true, and here's why I think you should believe it too. I don't understand someone calling in at 10 o'clock at night from Jerusalem to basically say, yeah, whatever.
that's the point. You can measure eternity with a clock. Understand what I'm saying?
No, and it seems like you didn't pay any attention to what I just said. I don't understand why somebody would call in to say,
I did.
I'm sorry. I don't understand why someone would call in to a show where you're supposed to be defending what you believe, and you're only calling in to say you can't defend it or won't defend it.
That's the point. That me and you I cannot defend it, and you cannot unprove it.
So it's not up to me to unprove it. Go ahead, Seth.
Well, my thought is I've actually got a couple of angles because I have heard this.
Go ahead.
God's ways are higher than our ways. Who could know the mind of God? We are simple insects. And so we must follow him on faith because he's simply too broad, big, complex, too superior for us to really be able to process. I think that's a total cop-out. So I guess I'll start with, why would a deity create us in a way where we were not able to understand him? Why would it be purposefully above us or confusing? Why do you think he would do that? I lose your motion?
Your phone's probably gone to sleep again, Moshe.
See, I mean, 2/3 of the planet either worships another God than the Christian God or none at all. And yet in the Christian New Testament, it says God is not the author of confusion. So I think, well, would a worthy parent create a child and then purposefully be so confusing or out of that child's sphere of understanding that it was
Have you ever heard
confusing to
about
all
the
involved?
God of Spinoza?
Yeah, we're not talking about
very familiar
Spinoza's
with
God
it.
now. You're a theist.
Yes, I am a theist, but my answer for your question is like deism. I'm half deist.
How can you be a half deist?
You
I
can't.
am, and I can because
Okay? It's
I
not
don't
possible.
believe that all.
I'm sorry,
What?
but you're not going to get to redefine terms and pretend like you can both be something and not something in the same way at the same time. That's just not possible. So a
Why
theist
not?
is someone who it violates the
Hello?
law of non-contradiction. That by definition makes it irrational.
I do believe in God, but I don't believe in the whole Bible and all those stories of out in the
Nobody
Bible.
asked that. Nobody asked that. Nobody said that. I'm done. Go ahead, Seth. I'm sorry.
Well, no. What is your criteria for deciding which parts of the Bible you latch onto and which you discard? How do you decide what's true, what's real, what's applicable, and what is not?
You have to have some, a distant reason, to be a reasonable guy.
Okay, so
we have stories.
hang on, hold on. So I'm sorry. You're saying I look at it and I think I'm a reasonable guy. Is that verse reasonable to me? And then you arbitrarily decide if it's true or not.
Yes.
Okay. So let's say you're at a table with 5 other guys and you're looking at the same verse and they say that verse is unreasonable and should be rejected. How would I know the difference between your reason and theirs and which was superior, if either?
That is my exact point, because God is not a table. God is something that we and you, none of us can understand it,
Okay,
I have a good example.
How do you know that?
My problem with your argument is this, right? If I cannot understand it, how in the world can I believe it or accept it? Right? hey, it's confusing and makes no sense. I think I should believe that thing is a nonsensical statement and a terrible way to live. So wouldn't it make more sense to look around and say, well, this does add up and the evidence does support this. And so now I do believe that for those reasons. Doesn't that make a lot more sense than, hey, it's fucked up and it's all confusing, but I'm just going to take it on faith? Doesn't the reason path make a lot more sense to you?
So the reason that I believe is just because I don't know everything that I need to know, you know?
Okay, all right.
I only know.
You don't know everything. None of us do. But if you believe
Right.
on faith something that is presented to you that might feel a certain way, aren't you
Mhm.
easy meat for any nonsensical claim that is presented to you?
Like what?
All right, a competing religion.
So
A different faith
that's
comes
what I'm
and they
saying.
state, my way is the only way. Here's our holy book. Here's our deity. And you got to take it on
Yes.
faith. All right?
The point is I don't believe in a religious. I believe in God Himself, you know, in something,
wait, wait, wait.
eternity. No,
Which God? Proper name, deity? A theistic deity? It says theist on your call description. Does your God have a
it
name?
says, right. The deism. Deist.
Dyson?
Yes.
Is that the push model that does the shag carpeting Dyson? Or
No. I'm talking
No?
about the God of Spinoza.
I don't.
Know about
Dyson's not the
Spinoza?
God of. I'm sorry. I'm totally confused, Matt. I fear I've wasted everybody's time trying to
The God
pin
of
this one down.
Spinoza, the God of Spinoza isn't a being. It is merely a metaphorical view of the laws of the universe. It's not a thinking agent. It's not a creative force. It doesn't know anything. It doesn't care anything. It doesn't do anything.
But he did create the world and the nature.
No.
He was the keep.
Spinoza's
Keep
God
part.
is not a creative, and it
He's a
doesn't
nature.
matter.
Nature
The
itself.
purpose, I'm sorry, but the purpose of this show is to defend what you believe, and your beliefs are not only irrational and in contradiction, and you are claiming multiple different things, but you are refusing to defend it and asserting that we can't defend it. If you can't defend it, don't call me.
I'm saying that there is a creator that create all
Prove
this
it.
universe.
Moshe, how do you prove that there is a creator? How do you prove there's a creator?
The creation itself, you know, the universe.
No. Moshe,
Yeah.
listen. You don't get to call it creation until you prove that it was created. Existence, reality, isn't necessarily a creation. So you don't get to point to reality and say reality is a creation and that proves it had a creator. You have to show that it had a creator.
You yourself, you can explain me something else, you know?
Moshe, even
Yeah.
if I'm even if I'm the dumbest motherfucker on the planet who can't explain anything, that is irrelevant to whether or not your argument is unsound and invalid, which it is. You need to demonstrate. How would you prove that reality is a creation?
That's what I was saying about faith. Might be
Moshe, I'm going to mute you. Faith can be used to justify anything. Your faith that there's a creator, somebody else could say, I have faith there's not a creator. And both of you would be irrational. I'm looking for people who want to defend their view, not just assert that it's faith-based, because faith is garbage. Faith is the excuse people give when they believe something that they cannot defend with good reasons. If you can defend something with good reasons, you never make an appeal to faith. I appreciate the call, but we're going to move on. Thank you, Moshe.
I wanted to throw something out that just occurred to me, and I wish I'd mentioned it after the first call when we were talking about morality, and the caller, I believe his name is Mark, was invoking Sam Harris, or maybe it was Brandon. I think somebody invoked Sam Harris. And I remember back when I was first emerging out of Christianity, I was doing a lot of reading. I read Letters to a Christian Nation, The End of Faith, and et cetera. And he had an article that had published in May of 2006 about morality. It was called The Myth of Secular Moral Chaos. And it's still available online. It's on his website. It's been reposted and reprinted a squillion times. And I think it pretty succinctly lays out this idea that without a God, without the objective moral standard, et cetera, that it would be moral anarchy out there. And so if anyone's interested, The Myth of Secular Moral Chaos, Sam Harris, you can Google search it. It should pop right up. It helped me to be able to better frame some of the apologetics that were thrown my way, at least at the beginning of my journey. It's funny, I saw a clip from Harris popped up. It was like a reel. And he was talking, I'm going to segue to politics for just a second. He was talking about, this authoritarian nightmare that we live in. And he said something that gave me the chills because, Trump just puts his name on the Kennedy Center, right? I mean, totally illegally. And he just arbitrarily does it. And already I'm thinking, I'll be there with a crowbar when his presidency ends and we're going to peel that shit off, et cetera. And all the things that we are going to have to undo when the time comes. And a lot of it, can be undone. It's going to be messy, but we're going to go back and we're going to peel that shit down. But Sam had said something like, we have communicated to the rest of the world that in any 4-year period, we might easily betray them and surrender ourselves to the worst angels of our nature. Or in any 4-year period, we could simply decide to become an authoritarian state, to bomb and to destroy and to issue tariffs and penalize and vilify and call people animals, et cetera. And he's right. And I thought it was sobering because even if all of this gets reset in my lifetime, have we so ruined our relationship with our allies or former allies all around the world that trust can simply never be rebuilt? I'd like to think that it can be, but I don't know. When I heard him say it that way, and I'm paraphrasing, it just gave me the chills because boy, you can betray trust like that, but to rebuild trust, that's a long, long mountain to climb, and that's an aspect of what's been going on that really scares me.
I worry about that too, but my kind of prevailing hope is that I can go to and interact with Russia, Germany, Japan, and a number of other things, and a number of other countries that we have been at war with. The economic reliance that we have on countries around the world. I think the more intractable long-term obstacles are going to be not who did you have a fight with, who did you have a war with, who did you betray at one point when a particular leader was involved, but which ones we have fundamental ideological differences between what the Constitution is supposed to be, not what it's being ignored to implement, and what their foundational principles are. Because anybody, there are plenty of countries that could be taken over by, just the worst of the worst fascist blah, blah, blah. And you don't blame everybody for it. Well, I mean, the United States has been in the business of putting the leaders we want in places that we want for ages. And maybe some benevolent, wonderful group will put the leader they want here to replace our garbage. But we got calls. And this next one, have you taken a call yet from Rainwood?
I don't recall the name Rainwood, so no.
He used to call under a different name, but he's using Rainwood now.
I have a poor memory, so I make no guarantees. But no, my first answer is no.
So Rainwood is calling. This is 24 calls. So welcome back, Rainwood from New York, a theist. who has a question for Seth about Jesus's purpose for coming to Earth. So, welcome, Rainwood. What do you got?
Hi, Matt. Hi, Seth. Pleasure to meet you, Seth. I don't think we've spoken before. How's the things going today?
Oh, just peachy. What's on your mind?
So when you were a Christian, just curiosity, what did you believe the reason was for Jesus appearing on the earth?
Well, I was a Bible literalist. So I believed that humankind was fallen. We were infected with original sin. I believed the Bible when it said there is no one worthy, no, not one, and that only blood atonement could cover our sins. And so Jesus was the sacrificial lamb who came and shed his blood. The purpose for Jesus coming to the earth was to show a demonstration of his godhood. He was both, they used to say it this way, he was both 100% God and 100% man, which, by the way, is impossible. And then he would be a blood atonement sacrifice to cover the sins of humankind so we didn't have to go to hell. That's what I believe Christ came to earth for.
So I agree 1,000% with you that Jesus was definitely not God, and the Trinity is anyone that tries to prove the Trinity just makes himself silly. He never claimed to be God when he was here, and I think the secondary reason for him
Yes, he did.
coming was to show us as humans what the kingdom would be like that was lost in Genesis. So at one point, he gave sight to the blind, hearing to the deaf, lame people walk. And when he resurrected dead people, he said, "Why do you marvel at this? All those in the mortal tombs will hear my voice and come out." And then the other thing is that when he said the Lord's Prayer, "Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven." So restoring paradise was the main theme, is my claim from Genesis to when Jesus came. How do you feel
Well,
about that?
Jesus said in the New Testament, I and the Father are one. I mean, the Son is the Godhood, right? The Father and the Son.
And
And so
then
this idea
continues
that they,
on through
no,
that
no,
verse.
no.
To continue on, he says, like we are one, you can also be one with us. That doesn't make him
they are
God.
one and the same, and also separate. I used to hear apologists say that God, Jesus, and the Holy Spirit were like cherry pie that you cut into 3 slices, where the slices were
Yeah,
different
that's
on the
silly.
crust, but the filling was all the same. It was one of those acrobatics that I haven't forgotten after 40 years. But you're quoting to me the story about Jesus as written about in an unsourced holy book from 2,000 years ago. But you're quoting it as if it is fact. How do you know those things were said and done by a Jesus?
Well, I posed this question a couple of nights ago, and
No. I don't want to know
there's a
your
common
question. I
theme.
want to know your answer to my
There's a,
question. How do you know that
how do I?
Jesus, written
Yeah.
about, said and did what he said and did?
Well, again, there's a common theme that he is depicting when he comes to the earth.
No.
That paradise.
No.
How do
How
I know?
do you
I'm sorry.
know? How do you know? Right? If he said he was going to come back to the earth and return, how do you
Mhm.
know what he said and did was actually said and done?
Well, there were people willing to die that were taking us down another road, but
No.
it's okay.
I'm not going to let you off the hook there either. Mel Gibson did a riff on this when he was being interviewed. I'll call it being interviewed when he was, enjoying a softball love fest with Joe Rogan. And Mel Gibson said essentially the same thing. The apostles died and they were martyrs for the faith. Nobody dies for a lie, which is absolute horseshit. The Heaven's Gate cult died for a lie. The Jim Jones suicide cult died for a lie. The people who flew jets into the World Trade Center died for a lie. So even if you could demonstrate that the apostles existed and did martyr themselves for the cause of Jesus Christ, The idea that somebody believed it to the point of allowing themselves to die or being killed for it does not prove of its truth. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I agree
Okay.
with that.
See, you and I line
I'm
up.
just trying to.
We found
I
common
was
ground
trying.
together.
I apologize for the delay. I apologize.
It's fine. I'm still waiting on how do you know what Jesus said and did supposedly happened? How do you know that?
Well, again, I don't know if this is going to be acceptable for you, but when mankind sinned, and I don't believe in the talking snake in the Garden of Eden. I don't believe in that, but I
Matt,
believe the message is true.
Matt,
It's like
I'm this close. He just bounced back to the book of Genesis. I don't know. I'm just going to surrender to you if you have anything else. Like I'm not getting answers to any of my
all right,
questions.
can you repeat the question?
You probably won't. One of the problems with Rainwood is that he doesn't actually say anything useful or helpful, and yet he keeps on calling. You called to ask what was Jesus's purpose for coming to earth. Seth gave you his answer. I could have given you my answer, which was almost identical. I believed that Jesus's purpose for coming to earth was to fulfill God's plan to provide us a way to be forgiven for our sins. There's a number of things you said that were just wrong, but you don't believe that Jesus is God. What God do you believe in? And do you think we should also believe in it? Absolute last chance. Don't mention the fucking Bible or anything else. Tell us some characteristic of your God, including should we believe it?
I believe in there's one God, and I don't believe in the Trinity. I don't believe that Jesus was part of a Godhead, never claimed to be God.
I'm sorry, Rainwood.
And
I'm sorry, Rainwood. When I say, tell us,
I'm sorry. I'm 10 years old, Matt. I'm sorry. Go ahead, brother. Go ahead.
when I say, tell us what you believe, and you say you believe in one God, but not the Trinity, not Jesus. I don't need you to tell me what you don't believe. I need you to describe that fucking God and to tell us if you think we have good reason to believe it as well.
I believe that God created the heavens and the earth.
Rainwood, I
By
swear to the God that you believe in, I will ban you from this fucking show if you don't actually answer the question I'm asking instead of preaching. You have called 24 times and none of them have been of any value to anyone. This will, in fact, be your final call unless you answer this question. Do you have a reason that Seth and I should believe in the God that you believe in? Yes or no?
I'll say no.
I didn't hear that. Was that a yes or a no?
He said no.
I apologize. I said no. I don't have a reason.
Then do not call back until you do.
Until
I am disinterested in anything that you ever have to say until you can offer some sort of justification for your belief. I'm not your friend. I'm not here for you to agree with and disagree with and give your uninformed, useless perspective on things. We are here, stop talking. We are here to engage with people who are willing to defend their beliefs. I'm not here to be your Sunday friend. I am not your friend. I will never be your friend, Rainwood. Is that clear? Is that clear? Is that clear?
You were
Is
a
that
different
clear?
person when you were Christian.
Yes, I was a worse
You were a
person when
different
I was a
person when you were
Christian.
Christian. I'm sure you didn't have a foul mouth.
Oh, no. I'm sorry, Rainwood.
You're
getting ready. No. I'm going to mute you. I'm going to mute you, and you're going to sit there and you're going to listen to me, and then I'm going to ban you permanently from this show. So, I am a different person than I was when I was a Christian. First of all, I don't buy into bullshit. I don't double speak. I don't pretend to know things I don't know. And I don't make my decisions about what is moral or how other people should be treated based on an antique book full of immoral positions. I am definitely a different person than I was then. But when you say, I bet you didn't have a foul mouth then, you're way fucking wrong. And I don't give a shit about anybody's views about fucking foul language. You know why? Because there's nothing wrong with language. Words are our tools to convey concepts. There's no such thing as an offensive word. There's no such thing as an offensive phoneme. You take offense and you want to call them foul because much like the bullshit you bought into about other stuff, you've also bought into puritanical bullshit about what language people should use in decorum. Maybe if you didn't completely suck at representing what you believe, maybe if you didn't completely suck at ever asking a question, maybe I would never have uttered the word fuck. But the word fuck is incredibly useful and it is applicable. It is an expletive that amplifies. And when someone is as fucking useless in conversation as you are, that's the right word to use. I was a Christian when I first went in the Navy, when I was a sailor, and I cussed like a sailor. And I would have agreed with you then that my language is bad. But also, Jesus said that it's not what goes into someone's mouth that defiles them, but what comes out. So even though you don't believe Jesus is God, you are buying into this notion of Jesus and the words that people use. Well, I will use whatever fucking words I fucking want if I think they're applicable. And you know why I use words like this all the time? Because it gives useless cowards like you an excuse to pretend that since you could not and would not engage in an honest and useful fashion, it's my problem. I'm just an immoral reprobate. God has given me over to a reprobate mind, and I just use absolutely the worst language. And if only I had spoken to you nicer, then your absolutely useless comments at every point in 24 fucking calls wouldn't have been viewed as useless at all. You're delusional. Don't ever call me again, Rainwood. Thank you.
You know, the swear words that I found most transgressive, even when I came out of the faith, involved the name of God. And I remember it still creeped me out a little bit, like I'm breaking that commandment, right? Jesus Christ, God damn it. Which, by the way, God damn it's become one of my favorite swear words. It's just so satisfying. But it was so baked into my psyche, this idea that I'd crossed some line. And once you cross that line and anger the Almighty, and rationally, it's bullshit. You're tethered to mythology. You've got scars from indoctrination, etc. It took me years to get to the point. And now, whenever it comes out of my mouth, more than just sort of a venting, or I like to use swear words as kind of punctuation. I find it a liberation exercise. I am no longer afraid of the monster in the closet, and if that deity didn't have a problem with rape and slavery and genocide, but did have a problem with me using the Lord's name in vain, that Lord would be, not worth following anyway. So on every level, I feel like I've given myself total permission to take the Lord's name in vain, and I rather enjoy it. So that's just me.
I think I heard a quote probably 20 or more years ago, and I'm not even going to try to attribute it, but it's from somebody like Hitchens or whatever, and they were like, "There's no reason that Christianity should get all the best curse words. I should get to say them too. God damn it."
My puritanical mother used to cuss once every 6 months. Now, I have a theory about this. I think that when people are at the end of their tether, they show you what they really want to say and do, right? When they're not made up for broadcast. And so, and I was a mouthy kid, and we had a house full of teenagers with attitude, and mom was wrestling with all of that, and we would drive her crazy sometimes. And about once every 6 months, a cuss word would come out of her mouth in this moment of frustration, and her face would just sort of twist up. She'd be like, shit, like the way it came out. It was almost painful, but at the same time, like she really had been wanting to say it. And finally, the filters were gone and it came out. And I just thought, it's funny because that's what she really wanted to express and had been suppressing for all that time. How much better might her life have been if she just sort of said what she was thinking without having to worry about all that baggage? And I approach it that way now, just if it helps you vent, say it. It's been good medicine for me anyway.
I know my mom would occasionally slip. But I think the primary reason she avoided it is, I think, one of the biggest reasons most people do, and that I'm kind of okay with, because if you have kids hear everything, see everything, learn everything, and they are going to emulate or outright do the opposite of, depending on how they feel, whatever they see from the adults. And if you're worried, it's not that you think there's anything wrong with anyone, including a kid, necessarily shit or damn or fuck or whatever else. It's you're worried about when they go do it elsewhere, what other people will think about you. You are the failed parent who's got the potty mouth kid. If it weren't for the fact that we propped up these puritanical notions of, oh, that's a naughty word, and then what do we teach them instead? Don't say shit, say shoot. Yeah, don't say damn, say dang or darn. In the South Park movie.
No, go ahead.
Oh yeah,
go ahead.
Well, in the South Park movie, there's that whole thing, where instead of shit say poo, instead of ass say buns, but fuck is the worst word that you can say. Fuck is the worst word that you can say. You shouldn't say fuck no. You shouldn't say fuck no. So they're teaching kids, and I just found that fucking brilliant. But if you say gosh darn it, do you think the all-knowing, all-powerful creator of the universe is going to be less mad that you said gosh darn it to express god damn it than if you had said god damn it? And the only way that you can think that is if you think God is actually his name, and that is taking the name in vain. This is a weird, peculiar dance, when really we could just teach people, you know what? There are words that bother some people that they find offensive. There are some that bother most people. Some of them don't bother any. And if you're going to engage in conversations with people that you don't know, that you're not familiar with, and you want them to actually pay attention to you and respect you and value what you have to say, you should speak in a certain way. It's the same thing we do with text messages, where you start putting numbers in instead of letters, or substituting emojis that people don't know. Language changes. Language is our tool to manipulate and use however we want. And we should be able to make up words, and we should be able to use any word. It is not the language that is offensive. It is the concept that is offensive. The word, well, there are words that YouTube will censor and strike down. You have to use side words to talk about inappropriate images or inappropriate acts against people or things like that. And those make sense, because assaulting someone physically or sexually is far more offensive than saying, fuck that. And doing it to the weaker, to kids, to those who we are supposed to be protecting and guiding and shielding from this, the people who can't give consent, the people who don't know and understand the world, is more repugnant. And in Tim mentions the Pope song, once again, here we go again, he goes through this whole thing, and he's cussing and just being as offensive as possible the entire time. And when he gets to the climax, it's, if the language in this stupid fucking song offended you more than the fact that the Pope is making excuses for people essaying kids, then you're morally complicit with that stupid fucker in the stupid fucking hat. That's Tim's point. So while Rainwood and Rainwood and others have used it as an excuse, well, I would have stayed and talked to you, and I would have given you a good reason to believe in God. But you see, you uttered a phoneme that I find particularly objectionable, and I don't care to associate with people like you. I'm going to go back to my MAGA group.
No, we should have given him one of these. I actually saw these online and bought them as stocking stuffers. You can't read it, but it says, fuck off. And it's got a little, like a crow on it, F. And it says, I give
Maybe
to
it's
you
a hawk.
My one and only last fuck. It looks like a crow, but it might be and at the other side, it says zero, zilch, not a none. So when you give someone one of these, you say, here, I give unto you my last fuck. And so I'm giving these to friends, not because I'm giving them my last fuck, but that they will have then ammunition to give those to other people. So there are 10 people in my circle who will be getting a fuck off coin just because the love of the
Nice.
holiday. Yeah. It's my way of being a giver during the Christmas season. Little good cheer. Fuck off. Last
Nice.
FYI.
Well, we've got some callers, and we've got a Buddhist who's been on hold for a little while here. So let's try and do this. Is it Ruslan or Ruslan?
It is Ruslan.
Ruslan? Calling from Spain.
Yes.
As a Buddhist who wants to argue for operationalized morality and the implications of Hume's guillotine epistemic weight of early Buddhist texts. Okay, I'm not sure how much use will be, but go ahead, Ruslan. Welcome.
Yes. Hello, guys. I don't know how to start this, but the title of the show tonight is "Do I Need God to Be Good?" And no, absolutely, I do not. And how to frame this is, if I can frame existence itself as a sort of experiment, and I have a goal in mind, then I can operationalize morality, because whatever is conducive to the goal that I have in mind will become good, right? And
So,
whatever is
this
not
is-
will become bad.
Now,
So
Ruslan, you seem to be arguing for the version of morality that I've been defending for 20 years, which is while there is no objective moral foundation, once you agree upon a foundation, you can make non-subjective assessments about whether or not your actions are consistent with that goal.
great, you are following me.
I'm
However,
not following
there's
you. I lectured on that for a decade and a half, but yes.
I need a definition so I can play along. What do you mean by operationalized morality?
For example, if we have like any kind of experiment that we are doing in physics or science, so there is a right way and a bad or wrong way to do that experiment. And if we have like if we want the experiment to succeed, like we want to do it properly, then our intent is to do it properly, and then we just follow the protocol to do it properly. And if we want the experiment to fail, for example, then yeah, like we just do it wrong, and in effect, like doing it wrong becomes right due to context, because how it's contextualized. Do you
But
follow?
at the beginning of the process, it is predetermined what is and is not a moral deed or action. In other words, how do you follow the process morally unless those moralities are established before the experiment begins?
Exactly, and yeah, I do not argue with this. What I am as long as we kind of on the same page right now as to what it means to just how we can
I'll shut up,
kind of
sit back and listen.
semantically tie the words right, wrong, good, and bad. That's all I want to establish right now at this point.
Okay,
So
that's
if,
not really the
if-
purpose of the show at all. It
no,
doesn't do us
I
much
understand.
good.
I understand. I
I
understand.
don't know why
But I
you're.
want
I
you
don't know
to-
why you're interrupting me. I don't know why you're interrupting me to tell me that you understand that it wasn't the purpose of the show. So, allow me to be a dick for a minute. If you knew it wasn't the
All right.
purpose of the show, why did you call in to do that?
Well, for 10 years, I've been following Matt Dillahunty, and I've been waiting to debate him. And right now, we are.
What
I didn't
what is it
even
you
get
wanted to
start.
debate me on? What is it
I
you
want to
wanted to
debate you
debate me
because-
on?
Well, I want to explain what I believe, and that you should believe it as well, because there is no good reason not to believe what I'm about to tell you.
Except that
And if you
what
allow
you've
me to
already
debate-
told, except that what you've already told me, I already said I agreed with.
Yes, but I did not give you the curveball, because I
Okay,
think there is
Then
actually
Ruslan, give me the fucking curveball. Do the thing that the show's supposedly for. If you've got something that you want to
All right.
debate me on, make a statement, and then before you do that, listen very carefully. Debating me is also not the purpose of the show. The purpose of the show is to defend people to defend their beliefs particularly theistic beliefs and things like that. You can book
All right,
a
let me
debate
tell
with
you my
me if
belief.
you'd like, or you can, I'm still talking. You could book a debate with me if you'd like, or you could call in on a different show at a different time that isn't focused on this. But I'm going to let you toss out your curveball so that I can figure out, is this something that we're going to waste any time discussing today or not? So what's the curveball?
All right. The curveball is the Hume's guillotine, right? No ought from an is. That means
I'm sorry.
if there
I'm
is
sorry.
an ought.
I'm sorry. Listen, you have to speak a little slower, back away from the mic. I did not understand what you said. You said the curve is, and then every word after that was one I didn't understand. So try again.
All right. Hume's guillotine. No ought can be derived from an is.
David
Now
Hume's
we'll say that-
guillotine.
Or guillotine?
Yeah, so Hume's
Follow.
guillotine. Hang on, let me explain for the people who don't know.
All right.
Hume's guillotine or guillotine, either is fine. David Hume is a Scottish philosopher who is my favorite philosopher, and probably the only one that most people ever need to spend any time studying if they want to understand the basics of epistemology and skepticism. And Hume's guillotine is that one cannot derive an ought from an is, that the mere facts of reality themselves do not have any sort of imperative towards action. And in order to achieve that, you would need to add some sort of goal. So are you saying you disagree with Hume?
No, I completely agree. I just think that
Okay,
the
I'm sorry,
implications of Hume's guillotine have not been explored.
Ruslan. When I ask a yes or no question for clarity, all I need is a yes or no.
Okay.
Because I also agree with Hume's guillotine. So what is the fucking curveball?
The curveball is that if there is an ought, it can only be derived from the cessation of is. And if we have a way to to make the is cease, that would verify our analysis, and that would be the fucking meaning of life.
So you said
And I
if there
will
is
argue
an
that
ought,
there is a way to do this.
your claim is that if there is an ought, it can only be derived from what?
The cessation of is. Because to know why existence exists, whether it's good or bad, we need to know something else.
No, Ruslan. What is. You cannot remove what is.
How do you know that?
However, because what is, you can pretend like what is. It is the fact. It is a fact that you and I are talking over a phone line. That is a fact. Nothing. You can't just make that go away. It is the case. Whether or not we should be talking over a phone line is where we're trying to evaluate an ought. The is does not cease for the convenience of the ought.
Well, what I'm saying is that if is caused, is it caused? Like, is there causality? If we know the causes from the is, how do we know that it has to persist? How do we know that synthesis of reality has to persist? How do we know that it cannot cease?
No, stop. You are fundamentally misunderstanding absolutely everything about this. What is, I'm not saying it is that way forever. I'm saying that what it is the now. It is timeless. It is T0. This is what it is at this particular moment and instant in time. It may change after that. But if it is in fact the case that you and I are having a conversation, then we're absolutely having a conversation. This is the law of identity. You don't get to violate the law of identity.
Well, I'm not trying to violate it. And like you said yourself, you said that you are not sure if it's going to persist forever. You don't know if this reality that we're talking about is going to persist forever.
Ruslan, we're done. Say goodbye.
Okay, goodbye.
Take care. So the purpose of this show is for people to call in and defend their beliefs, and in particular, supernatural beliefs, God beliefs, religious beliefs, things like that they think we should share. If you agree with Hume's guillotine, then we don't disagree. And if you agree that Well, if your view is that oughts can only be derived if we cease the is, then you don't understand the law of identity. Oughts can only, so far as we can tell, I can't say absolutely, but an ought can't be arrived from an is, as Hume's guillotine, which that caller agreed with. And so how do you arrive at an ought? I thought I solved this problem once when I was even sillier and more confused. And John Ferrer is the one that corrected me on it, a Christian apologist live on stage. And unlike a lot of other people, the very first thing I did was acknowledge, you're absolutely correct. Thank you for fixing that, because I've been saying something stupid. Because I thought you can't get from an is to an ought, but you can get from two ises to an ought, as long as one of the is it is the case that I want to make the world better. However, all I've done is smuggled an ought into there. What I want is the goal, which is not an is. It is not an identious imperative within the universe. Anyway, Ruslan, if you want to have a debate about that, you should put your thoughts together and send it in an email, because that is absolutely not what the show's about. And at every point where you thought you were going to be giving me the curveball of disagreement, it didn't exist. And if your point is that you think you found a way to derive an ought, then present that. I don't have any use for that. Anyway, I think everybody in the audience and Seth is now about to fall asleep.
Well, I was partially distracted. I saw someone in just do, I believe, a $500 super chat, and it blew my mind. It flashed red on the chat screen in front of me. So while I was listening to sort of this navel gazing from the caller, and I was not really tracking all that well, I then saw a bright, flashing, shiny red super chat for $500 and thought, holy shnikes. So that's part of the reason I have that look on my face. But wow.
Well, it's incredibly kind. Yeah, since we don't tend to read super chats on this show,
$500,
it is,
dude. Amazing.
I don't pay attention to chat, so I kind of end up missing it. So huge thank you to that person. That's incredibly generous and kind. All right. We have a couple of calls left, including a theist. I believe it's Hadi calling from India.
Hadi.
Pronouns are he, him. Hadi? Okay. I wants to make a case for the contingency argument. Go for it.
Yes, I do. Am I audible?
Yes.
You are audible.
Hello?
Yes.
Okay. So essentially, my position is that of an agnostic theist. It used to be just agnostic, but I recently came across an argument which I was completely dumbfounded for. It was a version of Ibn Sina's contingency argument, which I'm sure you're probably familiar, but I will try to put it into words as best as I can. Essentially, every object is either contingent or necessary, and if an object is contingent, then the chain of contingency must either end at a contingent object, or at a necessary object, or the chain of contingency must continue forever. So if it terminates at a point, then the point at which it terminates is a necessary object, and that necessary object is which we call God. And if it does not terminate, if it is infinite regress, then either the chain itself is necessary. So either the chain is necessary in itself, or the chain is necessary in something else. And if the chain is necessary in something else, then that something else is what we call God.
Okay. I'm not interested in what people call God. Going through a philosophical argument like the argument from contingency or the various versions of the argument from contingency, I have no way of knowing that the universe itself is not a necessary object, because I have no ability to explore beyond the Planck time back to the origins of the universe. So for all I know, the universe is non-contingent.
Hey, what's an agnostic theist?
So essentially, I don't believe in like a fixed concept of God, but it's like essentially there must be some necessary thing, And essentially, that necessary thing is what I would call God, even if I can't perfectly describe it and its properties.
Is that how you would define theism?
I would personally, yeah.
So even though you don't have a specific God in mind, you think there is almost certainly a God somewhere,
Yes.
but
And that
you
God
don't
may itself
know,
be
hence
like
the
the universe.
agnosticism.
Hmm.
So you
Okay.
believe, but you do not
Yeah.
know.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
Okay. Is there a way to know?
Well, I guess we can have logical arguments, but
No. I mean,
I
I'm just
suppose there's
asking.
no.
You're obviously convinced
Yeah.
that there is a deity. I'm not convinced this is a theistic deity, but okay, fine. I'm not going to
Right.
get
Right.
caught
Right.
on that. I'm not going to trip on that pebble. Is there a way to know
Mhm.
for sure?
Probably not.
So if you cannot know, is there a good reason then to believe it? Or
I suppose
is the
if it's
more proper
the
answer to
best
say,
explanation.
I do not know? You've got a hypothesis or you've got an idea, you got an opinion, you got a hunch. But do
Mhm.
you know? You admit you do not. You are agnostic.
Absolutely not. Yeah.
Okay. So your belief then would be based on what?
So my belief is based on what I subjectively believe is the best explanation for the universe.
Okay. Well, if there's an explanation, now we're back to evidence. So what would the explanation,
Right.
what would the evidentiary explanation be?
It would just be the contingency argument that there must be something, some necessary being or some necessary thing, even not even, it doesn't have to be a being of agency. It can even be some sort of a force or something or energy. And that
Well, and
thing or
now
that
we're
being,
really not in theistic territory. We're not even in deistic territory if we're talking about some energy out there. And I'm not sure that a contingency argument helps us if we're talking about
okay.
the idea of a God or gods plural. I don't know, Matt, am I missing something?
Nope, keep going. I don't. I don't under. There's a number of problems. I've done several videos on the various versions of the contingency arguments, and at the end of the day, I have no way of knowing whether or not the universe is contingent, and I have no way of knowing that the assertions that the chain, like for example, if I would agree that every chain of contingent things either ends at something that is non-contingent, or the chain itself is non-contingent. That, as far as I can tell, seems to be the only two options. What I don't know is what's the justification for calling either of those God? Because as Seth was pointing out, we're no longer in the realm of theism. We're not even in the realm of deism. We're in the realm, barely, maybe, of something akin to Spinoza's God, which isn't a thinking agent, doesn't have any goals or purpose, isn't detectable, doesn't interact with reality in any detectable way. It is. You mentioned at the top of the call, I was taking notes, and you said that you were an agnostic theist, and then there was an argument from contingency that dumbfounded you. Let me make a side point real quick. If an argument dumbfounds you, you should not be convinced that its conclusion is true. If you're dumbfounded, you should be like, "Wow, I don't understand that argument." You should definitely not be accepting its conclusion. And so, what's the justification for saying whatever the thing is that is non-contingent is in fact what we should identify as God, rather than just identifying it for what we've identified, which is that it is non-contingent?
I suppose you're right. I think, yeah, I may have just conflated like the semantics, and yeah, I guess I didn't think it through. Like, why should this impersonal being be called God? Impersonal being or action or whatever it is, why should that be called God? I suppose, yeah. If you just start with the definition that the necessary thing is God, then you can call that, but that would just be a meaningless definition. So yeah, I understand.
I
I
don't even
understand
think
where I
you
went wrong.
put, I don't think you put even being in there. I mean, because being implies agency, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, to me, Adi, These are the arguments like these are ones where we've learned something troubling about the universe, which is that we don't know everything and we don't necessarily have an explanation for how or why things are the way they are. And could they have been any other way? And then you get to a point where it's like all these other people are saying, oh, there's a God and God is the foundation of everything. And there's a plenty of presuppositional arguments that God is the foundation for reality or morality or logic or reason. And none of those are ever demonstrated. It is merely hey, we're uncomfortable not knowing, so let me stick God in as a label for whatever's supposed to go in there. The problem is that for some of these, there's no demonstration that there's a gap to fill or a problem to solve. It may be the case that it's just the way things are. So, for example, a lot of precepts will go down this road of what makes something true. And they'll then claim that there needs to be a God that is the guarantor of truth or even the possibility of truth. And instead, I prefer to say, why isn't it just a brute fact that what is true, that the way things are is the way things are? Not everything needs to have a justification for why it is the way it is. Some things are the way they are merely because that's the way they are. I mean, the quantity 2 is what it is. It's an abstract thing that we can identify with an Arabic numeral if we want, or a Roman numeral or whatever else, but we can express that quantity, we can work with it. Why is 2 is kind of absurd, because the thing that we're pointing at when we say, like, for example, because I have had 2 of these, here are 2 cans of soda. What makes that 2? Well, nothing. But whatever the quantity is, that quantity is the same. It's like the same quantity for you as me. However we want to, whatever label we put on it is irrelevant. But the concept that there's one item and another item, and that becomes what we call 2 items, is just true. I don't see that it needs a guarantor. And similarly, because we can't investigate the origin of the universe beyond the limits of mathematics currently, if not perhaps forever, to say that the universe can't be an infinite regress, I don't know that that's true. To say that whatever eventually it gets to something necessary seems to be the case, but what we call that necessary something, you might as well be saying, hey, let's just say that 2 is 2 because of God. Now we've solved the problem. And that seems to be the same thing they're doing with saying, oh, this thing that's necessary, we're just going to call that God. Okay, I have no interest in calling it God, and I think it muddies the water, and I think it is dishonest considering the robust history of gods of classical theism and the fact that billions of people on the planet believe there's an actual thinking agent that created everything and probably cares who you sleep with and interacts to answer prayers on behalf of the people as long as it fits in with his plan or whatever. That's a real issue. I give 0 fucks about esoteric gods that can't be proven, gods that are, it doesn't matter. Like, for example, maybe we would agree with this. The necessary thing, whether it's the chain or the universe or something else, whatever it is that's necessary, does it add anything to our understanding to call it God? And is there any benefit to calling it God?
I think you are like making a huge leap if you just call it God outright, which is what I was doing. So I realize that now.
Yep.
Fair enough.
Yep. I appreciate the call, Hadi. And
Yeah.
thank you so much.
Thank you. It was a pleasure talking to you. Yeah.
Yeah.
You
And
too.
stop by my
I have a
channel.
couple-
I go into contingency a little bit more. Seth, did you have more?
Oh, I was going to ask, like, I'm stupid. The philosophy conversations make me feel like an idiot. So when I'm hearing the contingency argument, I have to wonder, like, is it an if-then thing? Like, if
Yes.
this is true, then that is true?
All arguments can be made that way. Essentially, premise 1 is often the notion that everything is either contingent on something else or not contingent, which means and that is a true dichotomy, just like everybody's either guilty or not guilty. Those are the only options. Contingent or not contingent are the only options. That's just a logical necessity from a direct negation. True and false are not a true dichotomy, because there are also paradoxes, and whether or not we have something where a truth value can be assessed. Like if I said apple, that's neither true or false, but it is, I'm going to stop here and get back to calls. It is not false and not true, which is a whole different category. But yeah, the contingency arguments are essentially, they're trying to claim the universe must be contingent, and therefore whatever it's contingent upon, at some point there is a necessary, and so it's similar to first cause arguments. And I'm just like,
I'm with
like,
you.
like
I mean, if it's an impersonal, uninvolved deity beyond, I mean, like what application does that have to my life? Let's say there was a watchmaker god, put it all together and hit start, and then went off and had, coffee, went on vacation. Like, what application does that have to my life? Beyond coffee talk, right? It doesn't make any difference to me. So,
I'm working on a video over the next week. I gave a talk about it at the last LineCon Online, which was free thanks to everybody's donations. But Brady Goodwin, who's awesome and will be back, has been doing a series of discussions with Eric Hernandez, who's a Christian apologist that I've debated. Eric is now presenting his version of Alvin Plantinga's evolutionary argument against naturalism. Don't worry, know or understand any of that. I'm going to explain it all in the video if or when I get around to it. But at the end of the day, the premise is that since natural selection only cares about your survival, and your survival isn't necessarily contingent on understanding truth. Like, you can survive based on false beliefs. Like, if you think there's a tiger in the bush, whether there is or not, you run away and you survive. And that reinforces a false belief. And so that's the claim, is that essentially it means you have no reason to think your senses are reliable. That turns out to be not true. And to whatever extent natural selection could be said to care for truth, it is only the truth that is essential to survival. But I have a side question, which will be in the video, that everybody watching here can think about until then, which is, if there's a truth that isn't essential to my survival, why do I care about it? I mean, apart from curiosity and wanting to know and understand things, if there was a truth that was absolutely, you could completely demonstrate that this particular truth claim could never be verified by me and does not impact my survival at all. Let's say 8 galaxies away, there's a star with a planet and a rock on that planet, and underneath that rock is a single atom of a substance we have yet to discover. That is a truth that, if we say that that doesn't impact my survival in any way, there's no value in me knowing it now. But I think that if we find it, this is the reason we're curious, is that if we were to discover this truth, we might discover what impact that truth might have on our reality. But that's for the video. We have one caller on the line right now, and we have plenty of lines open. So if you're an actual theist who wants to defend an actual theistic position, I know you guys barely exist anymore. But if you're here watching and you were like, if you think that the other people weren't representing the God that you believe in, now's the time to call in and defend the God that you believe in. Otherwise, you're letting everybody know that you, like Brandon, aren't prepared to give a reason. And it's late enough in the day now that having, you should have at least been able to have a cup of coffee. It's at least long enough in the show that you might jog your brain awake. It's funny that Christians, Jews, Muslims, Hindus, Scientologists. I don't even know. I'm see. You guys have gotten me to the point where I'm actually including Scientologists, as if any of us give a fuck about any Scientologist ever calling to defend something we know to be only slightly more ridiculous than Mormonism. Modern invented religions where we can trace it back to the fraudster who did it. Those are, I mean, it's like flat earth, anti-vax, Scientology, Mormonism, and then we start moving into things only because they're older and less able to verify how much bullshit is in there, become gradually more reasonable. And none of you are calling in. None of you are even making an attempt. I've shut down atheists today. I've called out people who called in to have time-wasting discussions. It's Christmas coming up. Are you going to defend the virgin birth? Are you going to defend the nativity at all? Are you going to defend that Jesus is the light of the world, that he changed astronomy, that people came to worship the boy king, that he was responsible for all sorts of things, that he was killed and buried and resurrected in order to provide life for all of us? I mean, these are the core things. You call in to say, why did Jesus come to earth? And that was to fulfill God's plan to provide a path to salvation. Because according to Christianity, we can't do anything on our own ever. There's nothing any of us can do to earn our salvation. Do you have a way to show that salvation is real? That there's a heaven, that there's a hell, that there's something to be saved from or to? And how we can know any of this? The answer is clearly no. You guys have given up. And it's fine. You know, we won. It's just going to take time for those religions to go through their final death throes as they flail around, grabbing for whatever fascist grifter they can latch onto to try to enforce their bigotry by legislation instead of by convincing people that they're not bigots, but in fact are working towards the good and glory of God. Maybe you can buy your Trump Bible and have him autograph it, and just put on there right above his signature, "This guy absolutely grabbed me and Christianity by the pussy." All right. Alex has been on hold for 2 hours as an atheist. And so I'm incredibly grateful for your patience, Alex. Go ahead and please ask your question. Seth and I are here to try to answer.
Well, first of all, thank you guys for having me, and thank you for all of your work for over the years. It's been very helpful.
Thank you.
Thanks.
My question is really about how far do we go with our friends and family as skeptics in calling out whenever people make unjust claims about things. Like, I know this week some files got dumped, but there's people I'm friends with that are like, oh, this politician did this, so they're definitely in the Epstein files. And I'm sort of a stick in the mud because I find myself being like, we really don't know that, and you really can't say that. And or like the crazy uncle that we might have family plans with this week. Some conspiracy theory. How far do we go in calling this stuff out?
The ultimate question. I'm not a good person to ask. First Trump term, I was more charitable. Second Trump term, I think you've had a decade of front and center crazy conspiracies, awfulness, bigotry, cruelty. And I'm much less apt to even give them the benefit of the doubt. I'm not as interested in trying to convince them. I'm not sure if this is the right answer. I'm just telling you where I am. Like, at some point, I mean, how many sexual assault allegations do you have to see? How many wings of the White House do you have to see torn down? How many redacted or blacked out pages of the Epstein files do you have to see against all the decades of photographs of you cavorting with the world's most notorious child molester? How many boasts about sexual assault by the person himself? How many court rulings does there have to be? How many billions of dollars does he have to make selling $500 golden tennis shoes? How many lies does he have to tell? At some point, I found myself thinking, maybe somebody can reach them, but it ain't going to be me. So if I do push back, I will admit that it's not really because I have any belief I'm going to convince anybody in the room. But if something is said at a function, I might make a decision to engage and say, well, actually, that's factually untrue. Or actually, no, this is not correct. Or this is morally objectionable. Or this is just bullshit. But if I do so, I'm not doing so at this stage with the goal of trying to convince my interlocutor or whoever made the claim, because at this point, I'm more interested in just debunking the bunk. So I say it because I want to correct the record and show everybody else in the room that there is a differing and opposing point of view that I think is rooted in the evidence. I want to make sure that it is a matter of record that somebody pushed back. Now, if you are at a family function and you are in close proximity with people who are going to be ranting on about the conspiracy theory or grift of the day, only you can decide if you want to engage. In my own life, these days, with these people, if I do engage, I have no illusion that they're going to look at me, blink, and say, you know what, you're absolutely right. I'm going to reverse my position on all of the shit I've been doing since 2016, and I'm going to follow you off into Reasonville, and we'll frolic under the gold light and confetti. I have no illusion that will ever happen. I'm simply pushing back because I think the record needs to be corrected. Does that satisfy your question at all, Alex? I feel like it's an imperfect response.
I would say I'm largely in agreement with that. Most people in North Carolina that I'm around anyway, if they're on the side of the crazy convicted sex offender who, as you pointed out, we know has had photographs and everything like that. It's less about that and more about our friends, like people that we actually like and don't have such differing views, just making claims that they can't necessarily back up. I know I've seen Matt talk with Aaron, and they've had a few disagreements on hard
if I may,
atheism
let
and
me then
atheism.
color my response with a little bit more, if you'll indulge me, Alex. Is that okay?
Absolutely, yes. Sorry.
So it's almost like a debate, and Matt can speak to debates. He knows that his interlocutor on stage is not going to reverse his position, and he and Matt are going to go off. If he's talking to a Christian apologist, it never happens that they say, you know what, the Bible's bullshit, and let's all go be atheists together. It just doesn't happen. The reason for that exchange of positions is really for those who are watching in the audience and people who are viewing online. And so a lot of times I know that there may be people in that room that either they haven't heard the ideas presented, they've been insulated, they're in a disinformation silo or just removed from these cultural events, or maybe they're just good people and they're ignorant and they're curious. And those people do exist. And so if somebody's in the room, and I'd like to hear how Matt would approach this, but somebody's in the room and they say, well, vaccines cause autism. We all know that. You heard RFK Jr., right? They throw that out. Do I let that go? I think as a responsible person, I have to say, well, actually, that is untrue. And it is destructive. And it's part of a larger conspiracy theory. And it was based on a fabricated paper that was debunked, blah, blah, blah. Not expecting that I'm going to change the mind of the person who made the false claim. But I've corrected the record, and I've done so in the proximity of people who might be maybe more honest brokers when it comes to entering these types of conversations. When talking to people who are not seminar callers, so to speak, when I'm dealing with people who are genuinely potentially open, I ask questions. What if it had been your wife that he sexually assaulted in a New York department store dressing room? How would you feel about that? What if he'd said, what if it had been your daughter who had been one of the pageant contestants that he boasted about going to see naked back doors, at the competitions, and boasted about it to Howard Stern? How would you feel if it was your mother that he grabbed by the pussy? How would that make you feel? I like to try to make people feel uncomfortable because Donald Trump has boasted about doing it. It's a matter of record, but it becomes personal to them. And then they have to squirm and try to reconcile. And they don't, it's a lot harder for them to get away with, well, I elected a president, not a pastor. If you're saying, what if he had sexually assaulted a woman in your own life? How would you feel about it? Those types of scenarios I find useful. I don't know, Matt. Somebody in the room says something totally untethered, untrue, destructive. Would you stand up and say that's bullshit or what?
Yeah, depending on what it is and what the significance is, and also how likely I think I am. I'll definitely object, but how much I dig in on trying to convince them depends a lot on how honest of an interlocutor I think there are, how likely I think I am to potentially change their mind, and what sort of impact I think there is. I like what you're saying. I would also ask them, like, not just on the big things, not just on like the sexual assault allegations, and by the way, the various convictions, the 34 felonies, and the sexual assault civil charges and things like that. But how would you feel if you were Rob Reiner's daughter and the president of the United States said that stuff about your dad? How would you feel if you were the reporter with cerebral palsy that Trump stood there and mocked? There is nothing about the world that we're living in right now that makes any sense. Why should so much of the current administration be a mix of unqualified and alcoholic former Fox News hosts running massive parts of the government? Why should the richest man on the planet be in charge for any period of time with access to private information, trying to cut down on government waste, when they didn't do any of that? And they basically, as far as we can tell, just stole a bunch of data and then shut down. Why should he be allowed to? Do you know how much? So, for example, Marjorie Taylor Greene, who's now engaged and is going to be resigning from Congress, stayed just long enough to make sure she gets her lifetime pension, and also stayed long enough to make millions of dollars. Her net worth has gone from well under $1 million to, I think it's 7 or 8 million in the 5 years that she was there. As a Republican, she's been accused by other representatives of insider trading. And you know what? I don't even need to go to court to think that, and hear all the evidence. We know for a fact, if you go from having a net worth of under $1 million to 7 million in 5 years, well, you were in a position to make decisions behind the scenes about which companies are going to be, or even know about which companies are going to likely get a big boost. That's definitionally insider trading. I am waiting for a Department of Justice, and I'm surprised they haven't done it already since she's on the outs with Trump, to begin investigating her for insider trading. Why should any of them? Like, first of all, we need to make some changes to Congress, and this is across the board. I don't care what party you're with, but we need to lower the salary. We need to lower what any sort of retirement you get and how long you have to be there to earn some portion of it. We need to make it so that everybody in there is a civil servant, a public representative, an elected official who is not allowed to have a stock portfolio at all. You either don't get a retirement from there, or you don't get a stock portfolio. But at the minimum, every one of them needs to be audited every year to show where the money's coming from, in order to deal with that. Those are all questions that I think people on the left and on the right would largely agree with. It reminds me, I hate advocating for lying, but I've seen this many times, the sort of bait and switch where somebody will be standing there with a Quran, and they'll read a verse from the Quran and ask the person what they think, and they'll be like, that's vile, that's disgusting. And then they rip the cover off, and it's actually the Bible. Ha ha ha, you just said that about the Bible. And while I don't advocate for that kind of dishonesty, it is incredibly useful. I don't know how ultimately convincing it is after the fact, but what it shows is that if you remove the R label and the D label, if you remove the Christian label and the Muslim label, if you remove all of these labels that make it easy for people to identify with something without thinking about what they're actually advocating for, and ask them about what their actual positions are, we are way closer in agreement, way closer on so many important issues than we could ever imagine. Right now, Congress is having private hearings on the legal cases about what Trump did illegally with regard to the 2020 election. An investigation or a case that was completely shut down. And the person running that organization wants Congress to make those hearings public because sunlight is the best disinfectant. And the American people need to know this. And for some reason, the Republicans want to keep it private. This is about whether or not Trump broke the law in 2020. The whole entire thing got shut down. He should be in prison. And the Republicans are the ones shutting it down, but they're not completely alone. There are problems in independents and Democrats and stuff as well. The system itself is broken, but if you can get people to agree, you might be able to at least say, here's this candidate. I'm not going to tell you whether they're Republican or Democrat. Here's this other candidate. I'm not going to tell you what their party affiliation is either. Here's their position on this issue. Which one do you agree with more? And if you go down there, I think you'll find that there's a lot more opportunities for agreement. It's only when you get to the hot button issues, when you like abortion. Oh no, I have family members who will absolutely, if one of the candidates is opposed to abortion and the other one is not, they will always only vote for the one that's opposed to abortion, no matter what. No matter if it bankrupts the country, no matter if it hides, child diddling billionaires from prosecution, that is their only issue. And there are other people with similar, issues like that. I think asking them, how would you feel in this situation? Is this the president you wanted? Is this the president you were getting? Why is it okay for him to be getting richer while he's bankrupting farmers? Why is it okay for him to keep raising tariffs that destroy the economy and then using the money from the tariffs to give it to the farmers that he just fucked out of every penny that they were going to make from soybean? There was none. All of the sales from China went to Argentina, I think it was, but we also bailed out to the tune of $40 billion. And now, I think Seth posted this the other day. He's basically gearing up for war with Venezuela, but he's not going to declare it. He's not going to ask Congress to declare it. And if you read his statements about it, the word oil appears in his truths, his tweets essentially about Venezuela. I think more than any other individual word that could be relevant. So once again, we're about to go to war for oil. Are they fine with that? You've got to find the thing that they're going to object to. And then the other one is, okay, name a policy that Trump has enacted that you support, that represents you and your values, and then have a conversation about that. Because what they value could be different from yours, or it could be they were just wrong. When you ask people about the Affordable Care Act, I'm going to make up numbers based on what I saw the other day. These are not accurate, do not hold them. But it's like 60-40 in favor of the Affordable Care Act when you call it the Affordable Care Act. And when you call it Obamacare, it's 40-60. Just what you labeled it, whether you labeled Obamacare or the Affordable Care Act, fundamentally changes whether or not the overwhelming majority of people support it or the overwhelming majority of people oppose it. And so we need to stop using the labels that allow people to turn their brain off and just go, yep, I'm a Republican. Yep, I'm a Democrat. Yep, I hate Obamacare. Yep, whatever it is. I love Obamacare. Whatever it is. Get rid of the labels and get down to the meat and substance. But I don't see that it's likely to happen. And this is the sad part. Sorry for the 18-hour sermon. I don't see it's likely to happen because we live in the rapid fire 24-hour news cycle. Give me a million clips a day, none of which are longer than 15 seconds. we are currently stuffing ourselves into a metaphorical diabetic obesity coma by eating only the McNuggets of thought and not engaging in anything of healthy substance when we're thinking.
And to that point, which I think is the main point of my call, is do you, I know you do because you've been doing it for 20 years, but what do you think is the best way that we encourage better thinking amongst our friends so that they aren't, because we all know that nuance online is dead. So it's got to be a face-to-face conversation, but like, how can we go about like helping change in small ways with people's thought?
So I'm not going to have I'm not even sure there is a good answer, but the way I used to think the world worked when I started doing all this, where it was like, hey, let's have discussions, let's have debates, let's engage. You can see it right now. There's no theist. Well, there's atheist on hold right now, and we're going to get Eric. There's a non-theist on hold right now that we're going to get to, but it would be nice if you just modeled the behavior and spoke positively about what you're doing and why in a way that got people who might be apathetic or perhaps leaning the other direction to pay attention. So it's like, hey, I'm supporting this organization, which is desperately trying to make sure that we don't end up with another measles epidemic because RFK Jr. has taken over the Department of Health and Human Services. They have scrubbed the websites of accurate scientific information. And because of that, we've seen a 16,000% increase in the number of measles. People need to be shown pictures of polio. People need to be shown pictures of what we beat with vaccinations and what is now coming back and is going to come back rampantly. Show them that. Teach them, hey, I'm working towards climate change initiatives. Oh, that's just a hoax put out by China. Okay, I get that you've been told that, but here's the scientific data. And while you're perusing it, I'm going to be working to make sure that we have the sort of emission standards that at least move us in a direction. Because at the end of the day, my favorite meme on climate change is the one where they're all at this, what do we do about climate change? What do we do about climate change? And there's a guy standing there in the crowd that says, hey, wait, what if we go through all these changes and it turns out climate change is a hoax and we made the world better for nothing? You just admitted you made the world better. How can it be a problem to make the world better? Even if we were factually wrong about some little subtle thing about it, if the world is actually better, then it wasn't a waste. Good is its own reward. Life is its own reward. I don't need an afterlife to value this life. As a matter of fact, it diminishes all of that. And when you speak about things in those terms, I'm at least optimistic that you might be able to get some of the people in the middle to be more excited about moving away from the middle. I'm not convinced that anybody who's on the far right or far left is likely to move much toward the center at all anymore. But I can be wrong because I've failed for 20 years now, even though we won. The atheist won. Absolutely.
Well, I really do appreciate you guys for being so generous with your time, and I appreciate you guys once again.
Thanks, Alex. Appreciate you.
Thanks so much.
Have a good.
Take care of yourself. I got some theists on the line I got to get to.
I had an anecdote if you got 10 seconds, which is actually 60. But I was talking to a guy, and he's, I wouldn't call him an evangelical. He is a conservative. And I sense in him, he's gone from, he was kind of a single issue voter. All Trump had to do was switch his stance on abortion, right? Well, Democrats are murdering babies, so all right, I'm voting Republican. But he's not plugged in really to the issues of the day, and he knows that much more so I am, just because of the nature of what I do. And we were talking, and I said, you realize that Donald Trump is now calling people who are not on board with Christian nationalism guilty of anti-Christian bias. Therefore, we are the enemies of America. And once he's done going after the immigrants, he is going to then, just like he is asking people who want to attend FIFA, from outside the country to submit 5 years of social media posts, et cetera, you realize the next step. And Natalie and I are talking about what we might do, including relocating out of the country. If he then designates people who are non-Christian activists like myself, enemies from within. And what happens if the oligarchs are able to shut down every one of our platforms? Could we or might we be prosecuted, fined, imprisoned, or whatever? This is not out of the realm of possibility. And I think for the first time, it personalized and brought to the fore a reality that he had not before considered. He's in a relatively safe place. He's a professing white male Christian. He's a white male Christian, and he's not professing white or professing male, but you know what I'm talking about. He's a professing Christian in a highly privileged demographic. And now he sees somebody like me who's like, what happens if I'm declared the vermin? What happens if I'm declared the garbage? What happens if I'm declared an enemy of the United States and I am penalized in some way? Will I lose my house? Will I lose the ability to pay the bills? What will Natalie and I do with our future? Where might we go? What might the consequences be? And planting that seed, honestly, it was interesting because I feel like right now he's off somewhere actually considering something that had never occurred to him before. And I think there's great utility in doing those types of things. Anyway, that was my anecdote. My contribution.
Well, let's see how that works out. We've got a theist calling from the UK. The name is Mats. Pronouns he, him, says the behavior of secular people, especially in current times, proves the Christian God really is necessary for morality. Hey, Mats, what are we doing?
Good evening. Thank you for having me on again. I called into the show last night. I wasn't intending to call in again, but how could I not after Matt saying that the atheists had won and all that? So I thought I would
so I'm wondering,
and since there has been no theist, I suppose no theist called in, so I thought I had to.
Cool. So, but you said the behavior of secular people, especially in current times, proves that Christian God is necessary. What are we doing, and how does it prove that Christian God is necessary for morality?
Well, the general lack of conscientiousness in society, the general lawlessness,
I'm sorry, Mads.
Civil unrest, I would say, is downstream of the fact that there is no moral underpinning to society anymore.
Hey, Mads, you specifically said the behavior of secular people. You're talking about a general problem in society. I'm asking, what are secular people doing specifically that proves that the Christian God is necessary for morality? That's your claim, right?
That is my claim, yes.
Cool. So
how I'm defining secular, I'm not defining secular people specifically as in like specifically the new atheist types. I mean, that's a niche minority of people. I mean, you're just wrong when you say that theists are a dying breed and whatnot. I'm talking about
no. It's absolutely true. The data show that fewer and fewer people are theists. So when you're defining secular people, I'm not talking about you. Who are you here? Ignore all that. I don't need you to tell me who you're talking about. You said the behavior of secular people in current times proves that the Christian God is necessary for morality. I would like for you to give an example of what secular people in the current times are doing, and using that example, show how that it demonstrates that the Christian God is necessary for morality. Can you do that?
I believe so.
Okay, then let's do that.
In current times, obviously, I mean, you were just talking about all of the political insanity that's happening. That would be one example of it. And
I'm sorry.
Whoa. I'm sorry.
Okay,
the words political insanity are so broad as to be useless.
We need you to give a specific example of what secular people specifically are doing and then using that example, show how that it proves the Christian God. Let's try this again. I'm going to unmute you now. What is the example of the specific thing that secular people are doing?
So what, you want me to just run down a list of like random behaviors?
I'm going to mute you and I'm going to have you listen, because I'm now at the point, Mads, where I no longer think that you are honest or sincere. I think you're either lying or delusional. And that's a really bad place to be, because it's unfair to you. I don't know you. But when I say, give me that means one specific example, that means a non-vague, broad topic of what secular people currently are doing. And when you respond with, so you want me to give you a list? You sound like an idiot. So let's back this up so that you don't have to sound that way. I just would like you to start by giving us one example of the actions that secular poor people currently are taking. And then once we have that example, we can discuss why you think that proves the Christian God is necessary for morality. So what is the one example of what secular people are doing?
Well, one example would be, for example, how judgmental and condescending you're being right now would be an example of it.
Okay, great. I'm going to mute you because you're a liar and dishonest. I'm being judgmental and condescending because I'm here hosting a show, trying to engage with honest interlocutors. And you called in to suggest that something secular people are doing is a demonstration that the Christian God is necessary for morality, which means you don't understand morality, you don't understand the nature of proof or evidence, you don't understand the burden of proof, and you don't understand secular people. You see, because I wasn't judgmental or condescending until you repeatedly demonstrated that you are unwilling or unable to defend the thing that you called in to defend. I'm judging you because you have earned it by either avoiding the topic, being vague, or repeatedly refusing to actually participate in the conversation that you suggested you would be able to do. I'm being condescending because it amuses me that you called in because Matt said the atheist won, and here you are just letting us win over and over and over again. So here's the pro tip for you. And I mean pro tip in the sense that I am a professional debater. I get paid to travel the world having debates with people on these subjects. So if you make the claim, actions by secular people prove that the Christian God is necessary for morality, you need to provide an example of a specific action. And you can't have just considered the judgmental or condescending thing, because that didn't happen until after you opened your mouth and showed that you're not actually willing to engage honestly. In which case I'm judging you correctly, as everybody in chat will agree with, except for you probably. You're probably in chat, so you won't agree. That's how we got to there. After you give that example, then you need to show why or how the Christian God is necessary for morality. That's a whole separate issue. So let's just say, I'm going to give you one more shot to give the example, the one example of what you think secular people are doing that you can then use to show that the Christian God is necessary for morality. And if you stick with being judgmental, that's fine. I just don't believe that's honestly what you had in mind, if you had anything in mind. So you can either stick with being judgmental, or you can give an example. You tell me when I unmute you, I'm sticking with judgmental, or I have another example, and then we'll let you give an example. And then we will ask questions so that you can demonstrate why what you're objecting to is wrong and why the Christian God is necessary to correct it. So let's try this again. Are you going to stick with being judgmental, or are you going to come up with another example? I'm going to unmute you now. Which is it, Mads?
Would racism count as the same thing as being judgmental?
I'm sorry. I asked if you were going to stick with judgmental or if you were going to give another example.
Are you
Okay, I'll
saying
give
that
another example.
secular people are racist, like as a demographic?
I'm saying if they believed genuinely that the Christian God existed, they wouldn't be racist now.
Except that
Then
the Christian God is
they wouldn't
racist.
be susceptible to things like fascism, for example.
Except the Christian God is racist because the God of the Old Testament was the God of the Jews.
Okay, but that changes by the New Testament, doesn't it?
Do you?
No. God is unchanging.
Now go ahead.
Okay, but you can't deny that by the New Testament, the Gentiles are then included in salvation. And
What
are
does
counted
Jesus
as
say
being
about
made
that?
in God's image. What was that, sorry?
So what about Matthew 15:24?
Hold on, let me just look this up here. Matthew 15:24.
Yeah, Jesus is talking about the faith of the Canaanite woman, and he says, I'm not sent but
yeah, that's
unto the
right,
lost
yeah,
sheep
that's
of the
right.
house of Israel.
They compare her to
and
a
she
dog,
she calls him out. She calls him out by saying, basically Jesus is saying that, that it's not good to throw meat to the dogs. So he's referring
Right,
to everyone who's not of the house of Israel as dogs that aren't deserving of this, right?
Right, but typically Christians don't act as if they believe that
No.
line means.
No. I don't need you to talk about what Christians typically do. We're talking about what Jesus actually said. So in this thing of Matthew 15, he says, I'm here only to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. And it is not good to take the children's bread and throw it to the dogs. And then this Canaanite woman dares to correct the person who presumably you think is God by saying that the dogs eat the crumbs that fall from the master's table. And then he congratulates her for her faith and then says essentially that he's going to change his position on it.
That's not how the Christian God is conceptualized in the minds of most Christians.
I don't care how the Christian God is conceptualized.
Well,
I'm talking about what the Bible says.
My claim wasn't.
No. I'm telling you what the Bible says. Why do you have a Christian God that is inconsistent with the Bible?
Probably because I'm not a Protestant who thinks every single letter of the Bible is inerrant.
I'm
my
sorry.
Claim wasn't
I asked a question. So here's the thing. I'm going to continue. Okay. Now I'm going to mute you again. I'm going to continue to judge you as dishonest or confused because here's the easiest question you're going to get from me for the rest of the day. Are you ready for this easy question?
Am I unmuted?
Yes, that's why I asked you, are you ready?
Oh, I thought you said you were going to mute me again. Yes, I'm ready.
I did mute you, and then I unmuted you. And that's when I asked you if you're ready for the easiest question you're going to get from me today. Are you ready?
Yep. Go ahead.
If you don't believe in the Jesus of the Bible, where are you getting your information about Jesus from? Or from where are you getting your information about Jesus?
Why is it relevant to conversation? Do you not remember what my...
Okay, I'm going to mute you again because it amuses me. And now I'm going to judge you and make you look like an embarrassing fool in front of everybody because that's exactly what you deserve. You called in to say that secular people are acting in a way that confirm and prove that the Christian God is necessary for morality. And we've now danced around all kinds of stuff. And you suggested that racism. And when I point out that racism not only isn't exclusive to secular people, it's amplified by the typical version of Christianity, specifically the Bible, your response is essentially to say that you have a different version of Jesus. And so your version of Jesus isn't racist. And your true version of Christianity isn't racist. And so that means you need to demonstrate how or why your version of Jesus and Christianity is true. And if it doesn't come from the Bible, and it conflicts with the Bible, then we need to know what your source is so that we can show why you're preferring a non-biblical version of Jesus, which is like just your opinion, bro, over the one that's in the Bible. See, I'm going to unmute you again. But rather than continuing to do this, because it might be unfair, let's see if you can convince Seth. Tell Seth what he's doing that shows that the Christian God is essential for morality. That would be really cool. You're on.
Do you want me to respond to the claim that the question you were just asking before? Do you want me to move on to this separate thing now? Because I
Tell
would say
Seth
I get
what he's
my
doing
idea
that
of the
proves
Christian
God.
God. I get my idea of the Christian God from, well, specifically the Gospel of John, and then in the writings of Paul and John in the epistles, and then also the historical writings of the early church fathers and the historical view of the Christian God would be primarily where
So
I
you
get my idea of
you
Christian
cherry
God
pick
from.
from the Bible. So you cherry pick from the Bible and ignore the parts of the Bible that you don't agree with. So how do you know
Yes,
which parts
that's
of the
correct.
Bible you should ignore? How do you know which parts of the Bible you should ignore?
Because I believe that morality comes from God, and therefore my moral intuitions must indicate which parts are more reliable than others.
So now your entire argument is circular. You begin by believing that morality comes from God, which convinces you that your moral opinions are correct. Well, I'm sorry, but that's a circular argument. The whole point is you must demonstrate why your moral views are correct. You don't just get to assume them. You also are using your own assessment of Christianity, and then using the fact that you believe that God is giving you the information to allow you to determine which verses of the Bible you're going to pay attention to and which verses you're going to ignore. The rest of us are going to deal with reality and not cherry pick and go with a God of our own invention from our own head. So once again, for the last time, what are secular people doing that prove God is necessary for morality?
Secular people have increased levels of crime. They support authoritarian fascist governments.
Okay. Hey, Seth.
I'm listening to broad, unsubstantiated generalities under the umbrella of a fascist, Gilead-esque Christian theocracy being established under my very nose, and the people standing in fierce opposition. Both people of faith and of non-faith have secular values and are fighting for state-church separation under a secular constitution. So Matt's argument makes no sense. And how many of the fascist dictators and authoritarians, totalitarians, tyrants in our history have invoked the name of God as they carried out their genocide, slavery, and oppression? This idea that he can just show up and say, well, secular people support fascism is so untethered that I suspect any further conversation is probably not going to be productive. But Matt, whatever, I mean, I wish you the best with that, but you're not going to get very far.
I'm gonna try one quick question if I can. So I'm gonna unmute Mads right now.
I'll be ready.
Mads, is the current Trump administration a fascist authoritarian administration?
Very obviously, yes.
Okay. And do you think that is more supported by secular individuals or by Christian nationalists?
I believe it's supported by Christian, so-called Christian nationalists of the Protestant variety. I mean, many of them are probably don't even really believe it. It's performative.
So Mads, thank you for admitting that your entire premise is wrong. I need you to go out and start talking to the Christian Protestants that you find objectionable and clean up your own backyard, because that is a huge chunk of Christianity. And if you're going to oppose the people who identify as Christian, who you think shouldn't be identifying as Christian because they're giving you a bad name, You need to go do that and stop calling me, because I'm the one here who is Antifa, who is anti-fascist, who is pointing out the Project 2025 and the Christian Nationalists and the Heritage Foundation and the overwhelming bulk of religious-minded things. And by the way, Christianity itself and Judaism are authoritarian regimes with God at the head of it. Goodbye.
You know, we get into, and this would be a whole other show, well, what is true Christianity? And I just don't think you can, it's not one thing. People like to make gods in their own image. I think they make Christianity in their own image. But if you look at the Bible and those people who, especially those, and I appreciate and love the progressive secular values Christians who I'm standing alongside in the fight out there. I really do appreciate the fact that their Jesus or their version, which I believe is a cherry-picked version or altered version of the biblical God, is egalitarian, humanitarian, would never judge anybody, loves all the gay people and loves all the trans people, loves all the non-Christians and would never make hell, blah, 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 all that stuff that they like to say. Fine, I get that. I think they've made a religion in their own image. But back to the book of Genesis, the Bible's an authoritarian book, right? The first thing God did was make Adam and give him dominion over the earth. If you see throughout the Old Testament, it is tribal wars as God is claiming territory for himself and his own handpicked people, often under penalty of great pain for those who do not comply, enslaving the others. If you look at the Great Commission, we're supposed to, or believers are supposed to go ye into all the world. To do what? To create converts, right? To spread the gospel and baptize people in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Ghost. The Bible itself is a dominionist book. So, you know, it's an interesting conversation because the dominionist Christians, they're Christians. And the secular state church separated Christians are also Christian. And it's hard for people to digest that two things can be true at the same time.
See, yeah, it's funny because the person called in to say, it bothered them when I said that we won. And then they just kept setting me up to keep winning and winning and winning. Because at the end of the day, their basic argument, even though they said secular people's actions confirm that the Christian God is necessary for morality, something which they didn't even begin to demonstrate is or could be true. Their real objection is that there are Christians out there who they don't think are real Christians. And so they're referring to those people as a secular. So this is why at the beginning when he's like, oh, I don't mean secular like necessarily atheist. He means everybody who isn't his particular version of Christianity, who are all false Christians. We are the ones that demonstrate that God is necessary for morality. Here's the thing, and I'm going to get to a call right away, and it's going to be the last call of the day. If you want to demonstrate what is necessary for morality, you have to define morality, and then you have to build a case to show what's necessary. And if you're going to say that Christianity is necessary for morality, you have to then identify what Christianity is, what its features are, and what moral positions it's advocating for. If you're not going to use the Bible for that, which this person is cherry picking from the Bible, then you've invented your own version of Christianity. Cool. I'm sure your version of Christianity is better than somebody else's, but that doesn't make it true or necessary. And it also doesn't mean that me being judgmental and arrogant to someone who showed up unequipped demonstrates that the Christian God is necessary for morality, even if I was being grossly immoral by doing it. Even if I was being an absolute immoral asshat by being judgmental of the caller, that in no way ties to, therefore, the Christian God is the foundation of morality. It's just, A does not follow. All right, here we go. Final caller for today. T, pronouns he, him, calling from California, identifies as a realist and says, and I promise I'm going to try my best not to nitpick this T. So it's probably best if I stop talking. But T says he doesn't buy into the God thing and he doesn't buy into the atheist thing, but he does believe in some kind of creative force. I'm all manner of confused, so help Seth and I understand what you mean.
Well, okay. Well, the realist just sees everything for what it is. I don't believe humans know enough about what created us, where we came from, what happens after death. We're just so like, you know, we don't know, and so we explore. I get a lot of the points. I went through the religion thing, and then I went to college and actually got educated and started studying world religions. And obviously, there's many contradictions and problems, and 4,200 denominations and Vatican and all that evilness. And but then on the atheist side, it's like, well, we don't believe God, and okay, and
Yes.
then but I also see. I'm a homeless feed thing. I run TLC Outreach, and I've always had a heart for people. And I can't deny that people that do, pray to Jesus or go to, start going to a Celebrate Recovery type thing. And I just can't deny the evidence in their life that their lives have become better.
Okay, I'm going to jump in, if I may. First of all, we are now talking about two totally different things. You and I agree that we don't know what happens after we die. All right, fine. But I know evidence that there is a life, a conscious life beyond this life. And I see evidence only that the matter in my body becomes incorporated into the world, the earth, and eventually back into the cosmos. But I don't know for sure. But that's not how an evidence-based approach works. I don't believe in a God because I see no evidence for a God. My mind is not totally closed. I'm not saying that there can't be a God. I certainly know there's not a benevolent, involved God, a God that genuinely cares or even is competent. I think that's a fair statement. But, if you don't believe in a God because you don't know, therefore your mind is open, at the very least, you could call yourself agnostic. You don't sound like a God believer. I don't know is not a statement of belief. That's fair, isn't it?
Yeah, I guess a lot of semantics involved. Agnostic is
I don't
another
worry
way.
as much, if I may. The labels are interesting and they are helpful, but some kind of creative force is such a nebulous term. And then we're pinballing over to a different conversation about how you deal with those who are suffering. And a belief in God often brings a kind of, it's medicine in their lives. It alleviates fear. It gives them comfort. Perhaps it creates a sense of community. Well, you're speaking to something totally different, which is the power of everything happens for a reason. Somebody up there or something up there is in control. Perhaps one day, if I have suffering in this life, I'll enter another life where there is no suffering. These are all human tendencies to fill blanks and self-medicate using God speak, God ideas. And religions have long done this for us. And that's one of the reasons I'm a big humanist. I think as long as we see suffering on this planet, people will be looking to the heavens. As long as people are not educated or comfortable with the idea that they are mortal, they will look to the heavens. But that doesn't validate the heavens or gods. It simply means that we are human beings who need to be alleviating suffering and promoting good education on this earth, saying, I don't know when we don't know. But we don't fill in the blank and say, well, there then must be a creative force. I don't see evidence for a creative force, at least a constructively creative force. That's fair, isn't it, T?
Yeah, it's a lot of words to expound upon the point.
I use a lot of words. That's my fault. That is my fault. Yeah.
Meliorism is a newer word I just learned. It's fascinating. And I say, if you're going to believe in anything, believe in that.
Believe in what?
And meliorism, it's a word I just came across. I try to learn a new word every day.
Meliorism.
Yeah, meliorism, MELIOR.
The philosophical belief that the world isn't perfect, but can be made better through human effort. Meliorism.
Yeah, I like that.
Okay. So no, I have a problem, T. Because first of all, we're about out of time. We got less than a minute left. Feel free to call back to the Sunday Show After Dark or call back some other time, because I have all kinds of objections. Because either theists are right or the non-theists are right, and you want to try to pretend that both of them are wrong, and then you say that the one thing you should believe in is that we can work to make the world better, which I think is consistent with secular humanism, and I don't think that's anywhere near the only thing one should believe in, and I don't think it's in the same category of things to believe as whether or not there's a God. Do you have any way of showing that atheists who are not convinced that a God exists are wrong or irrational?
No, I wouldn't say they're wrong.
Cool. Then that's where we got to stop. Then that's where we got to stop, because if we can't prove theism, you don't get to suggest there's a problem with atheism when atheism is, I'm not convinced that there's a God. But I have to go. We have completely run out of time. My producers are going to be mad at me for continuing to expand on that afterwards. Thank you, Seth, for hanging out with me on Sunday. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Thank you to our producer for doing a wonderful job setting the show up, and our call screener and all of our moderators. You can like and subscribe and follow this network. You can get ready, because there's going to be another mug war, but you can go to patreon.com/calltheline or linemerch.com, and don't forget to like and subscribe, and maybe we can find a way to make the world better and get better conversations.